Hello.
Hello. Good evening from
So I love
Dubai.
those eyes in the background.
Yeah, I got this image from Scott's website actually.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I haven't
Great.
taken his I haven't taken his permission, but I I got it and I love the image.
Oh, it's like it's looking right into your heart.
Yeah, it literally connects. It literally connects with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, today we have very interesting person with us.
And his energy is all about it, and the way he connect with people, and the enthusiasm in every word he say, and you can really feel the kind of effort he's trying to put it into the wildlife, as well as in connecting you with the subject and nature and conservation. So let's get it from his own
Yeah,
way.
and yeah, that's right. The way you mentioned, because see, the thing is, he started using camera from 6 years when he was 6 years old. So you can imagine how many images
Yes,
that he has
experiences.
taken so far, how many years he have been in this field, and he is also a professional photographer based in New York now. So there are a lot of things to hear from him, and let's add him to the stage.
Thank you
Hey,
and welcome.
hi from New York.
Hello.
How you doing? Very
Hello.
nice, Nico. How are you today?
Good.
Thank you for
Thank
having me.
you. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you. And
accepting
all
our
well.
invitation.
My pleasure. This is great. This is great. It's good to see you all today, and thanks for having me. And it's my pleasure to talk to you here today from New York, from my home. And I have a little program that I put together for everybody. I'm going to share my screen with you. I guess
Yeah.
a small little bit about me. I've been doing photography all my life. And I started in the wedding business, and I'm actually still in the wedding business to this day. And the wedding business has treated me very well because it's basically been the funds that I've been able to get to travel the world on my own, to collect the images you're going to see, to have the experiences I've had, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Some of that through some picture taking knowledge. I'm going to share with you a shot list today that will give you a good broad idea of how you should handle a situation when you come up to it outside in the wild, or even when you're taking pictures by yourself. It should be really exciting. Boy, I'm getting ahead of myself. All I was introducing myself, and now I just want to talk about the program. But anyway, I'm excited, and I'll take some questions at the end, and maybe I'll just jump right into it so that I don't ramble on too long. So today we're going to talk about romantic nature with photography. I am Scott Dere, your host. I'm really thrilled to be here today. It is a real pleasure. So I like to start with a few images and with a question, and that's usually because I'm in front of an audience and I get to hear back from them. And today, I guess I get to talk to you without hearing from you right away. So my question usually is, what makes an image outstanding and stand apart, and what makes an image great? And usually every answer I get is a correct answer because there are no real wrong answers. But for me, the reason why images are so special is when they create a reaction off a page. When you can see an image that's just two-dimensional and they make you react, laugh, get sad, that's a successful image, in my opinion. And so that's why I like to show these few images to start. Now, of course, maybe not everybody gets my gist, but I'll talk you along as I go. For instance, this image reminds me of a human that's gotten his finger stuck in a plug or a socket, and his hair has gone straight erratic. Even though that this is common for the bird that it is, and it's an African secretary bird. And anyway, the idea here is to get a reaction. So I put together your first few images, and let me just calm down and get this right for you. For instance, an image should tell a story. And here you got all these bugs in a swarm near this peregrine falcon, the fastest bird in the world. And the peregrine is scratching an itch. And so the idea here is the bugs make you itchy, and so that's why I captured this moment. It's not the falcon capturing a bird in midair, and it's not the spectacular, but it is a story that I think people can understand just by looking at an image. And so that's the idea. All right, I want you to be able to look at these bears and understand that this bear wants its food for itself and does not want to share with the bigger bear. And it's just the eye contact and the expressions on their face that should evoke these feelings when you look at them. And so that's the idea. And even this image, when I saw this image down in Florida, and it was just a bird's nest, and we were hanging around it, and then all of a sudden, mother bird put out its wing, and it became a puppet show for one of the babies in the foreground. Instantly, I was taken by this, and I had my camera set, and I knew that I wanted to shoot this nest, but I was really waiting for a moment, and I was caught up in a conversation with one of my students, and then it happened, and my student knew it immediately, and I was quick on the draw with my camera, and I was able to get the shot. And I don't know if that student was able to get the shot, but we both knew right away that this was a special moment. And even the picture is called Puppet Show, okay? And another image like this that's just supposed to be profound in a way when you look at it and you see this giant tusk. And of course, you're not there in real life, but this tusk is as big as me. It's over 7 feet tall, just the tusk on this elephant. And so to try to put that in perspective, it's kind of an incredible image. All right, but anyway, here's the shot list that I wanted to introduce to everybody and try to talk you through during this program. Each one of these equals an instance that you might actually come upon in the wild. You might actually see these things, and you have to know when you have your camera on you how to react and how to capture these instances in a moment's notice. Because sometimes, and especially in wildlife photography, these moments are fleeting. They only last seconds, if less. And you have to be ready, you have to be set, and you have to be thinking properly to be able to get the great images. So I'm going to leave this on here for one more second so that if you can, take a picture of it and write it down. And I'll put it down in the end if you have any questions about it. But the idea here is to keep this list in the back of your mind at all times. And so let's apply them to some photographs and give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Because once you start applying these things to photographs, you start to stack them. You start to add textures with landscapes, or you add the landscapes with the balance, or you add the animals in the landscape. Whatever it is, these are really the fundamentals that you're going to find. So let's get into it. Let's dive in and check this out. For instance, these are red foxes. They're found on most continents in the world. And these are right here on Long Island. And me growing up on Long Island, I was telling our host that I was a big bird of prey photographer growing up because there wasn't much else to photograph around here besides birds. But foxes do and are around Long Island and New York, and so opportunities like this are huge for guys like me that lived in the city as a young man. And so I want to talk about balance today. And when you approach a situation like this, you have to know what you want to do and how you want to do it. So I'm head on with the fox, and I have a pretty much equal amount or an equal feeling from the kits that are suckling underneath the fox and drinking milk. And so I centered my image right away. I rarely center an image. In fact, I don't teach to center images. In fact, I teach how to use your focal points in the camera and how to switch them quickly so that you can compose an image and make it interesting to the eye. But sometimes an image lays itself to centering. And this is one of them where the balance on all sides are fairly equal. And so, yes, I have really good eye contact, which is something I'll talk about in the end, but also very important to me because it engages the viewers. It puts them where I am when I took the photograph. So I find that very important. But again, here's another example of it. So I have this short-eared owl up in New York, up high up in New York State, coming right at me at the moment. And his wings, while he's flapping, I want to stop him in motion. And when I look at the photograph, I got him centered with exactly the same amount on both sides, and is centered, and of course, most importantly, his eyes are super sharp, okay? And really, most images will be acceptable if the animal's eyes are sharp. It's when the animal's eyes aren't sharp that an image begins to fall apart, okay? So getting back to balance, again, it kind of lays itself to just having all equal sides when an image perfectly falls like this, symmetrical. All right, a balance in the geometry of the picture. Okay. Again, I have a lot of these and I can't show them all, but I've selected a bunch that I think are great. This one I shot really local to my house, right in the back, almost in the backyard. And it's an osprey bringing in a fish. And again, the wings are so symmetrical that I want to center the bird. And especially that one eye that's almost like a cyclops eye that's right in the middle. I think that's definitely the focal point of the image. Okay, so it's all about balance on this. And you're going to find this often. You just have to know when to do it. I do not center images often, and I'll tell you why. Because they're not always often interesting to look at. You want to hold your viewers and, excuse me, and your audience as long as possible when they're viewing your art. And so wow factors and sensual lines and sensual looks are important to the art. All right, so this one's centered too. And I took this in Africa in Amboseli, if I remember correctly. We were up early in the morning and there wasn't much to shoot, and we came across this lake. And what was interesting about it was the fog in the background took away the horizon line. And so you couldn't really, it just was infinite back there. And it really caught my eye. And when I saw this grouping, I had to know exactly how I wanted to handle the image. And that's why I centered them, because there's somewhat a balance to the birds. There's 2 versus 2, so there's some balance there. And I've worked on this image a little bit, and I took other images with just 2 together, and I found that this one really worked the best. I also love the painterly feel of the water in the foreground, okay? And that's kind of a leading line that goes right into the sharpness of the animals, right in the center of the image. Okay, so that's where centering works. But this image is a really good example of quadrants of an image and the geometry of a photograph. Okay, so when I was photographing this, and this is also in the same place of those flamingos, it's in Amboseli, and I'm in the desert part, and these elephants are walking over the hill in a group, and they're kind of really walking in an angle. And I'm desperate and hoping that one of them will turn towards me and give me a head-on shot. And amazingly, it did happen. And so when I see this in my own eyes, I'm actually out there. I'm trying to figure out what the best way to capture it is. And as soon as the center elephant turned towards me, I knew I had to center him. Because look at the balance. All right, I could literally draw 2 lines through this image from north to south, so basically vertical lines, and put 3 quadrants into this picture. And I wish I did it. I wish I put 2 red lines right there so you could see it yourself. But you have a grouping of 3 on the right, a grouping of 3 on the left, and a nice balance of 4 in the middle. And then the leader looking right at me or coming right at me, I think really holds the image together. All right. So yeah, there are quadrants to an image like this. And once upon a time, I used to shoot film, and I was shooting square format Hasselblad, and it was a completely different idea of quadrants. I would split the frame in half and in fourths, where when I shoot 35 millimeter, or the equivalent of, I'm shooting in thirds and in sevenths and in fifths and quadrants like that. Okay, but here's a different picture on where leading lines and composition come into play. Okay, purposely I put the owl into what I like to call a power corner of the picture. Okay, the idea here is to lead you, the viewer, the eyes to the subject. Okay, so there's several things that are important. First, the eyes have to be sharp, because the eyes are going to be attracted to that sharpness. All right, and then the lines kind of have to lead itself towards the bird. And then, of course, putting the bird not in center in this case works, because the image isn't balanced on both sides. So I'm looking for some kind of balance, and I'm looking for some kind of leading line. And the fact that I took the picture at sunset with the alpine glow really helps this image along, because of the colors and the beauty of it. Okay, so all these are the things I'm thinking about, all right, when I photograph something like this and put it in the corner. All right, and I try not to cut off the branches too often. Try to notice how I didn't cut them off at the top and on the left side. I try to keep all those sensual lines, because I feel that they're important to an image. Okay, but here's something where it's really kind of the opposite. I'm using a lot of negative space on the left instead of lines, and then making my bison really stand out with the sharpness in the eye. Now I'm shooting this in a snowstorm, and I'm using an actual slow shutter speed, because if you really take a close look at the image, the snow is looking like rain, but it's really snow. And I'm taking a longer exposure where the snow is streaking through the picture from the wild weather, where the animal is so still, it becomes super sharp, and it becomes really profound to look at. It really stark, really pops off the page. And so I really like this image a lot, and I photographed it from my car. all right, just passing by the animal. Often they're on the roads passing by. And so I open my window, and there are some tricks to that. You can't just photograph out a window with the heat on. You have to kind of acclimate the car to the temperatures outside, which can be uncomfortable. But again, the heat makes a plume that can make a picture out of focus. So can the heat off the car, in fact. The wind was howling so much in this scene that I don't have to worry about things like that. But the sharpness in the eye and in the fur is super important to the success of this image. And I really love looking at it. There's a lot of wind going through there, and I think the snow shows it. Okay, so leading lines. We're moving on, and we're talking, instead of geometry and balance, we're talking about leading lines now, okay? And that's kind of important to any photographer who's taking a picture, okay? So I'm on a boat now. I'm on a Zodiac, a real rubber boat, and I'm floating into shore, and there's this eagle on the ground, and I'm pretty sure he's on food because it didn't fly away, all right? And I know that this beautiful waterfall is in the background. And so I have to line up the bird properly with the waterfall to give the image balance. I don't want the waterfall growing out of the eagle's head, because then it's just a single line, almost like a totem pole of image to look at. Yeah. And the image becomes unbalanced, where I'd much rather look at the eagle and then the waterfall and then see how that balances each other from corner to corner. So there's a reason why I put the eagle in the corner, and there's a reason why I'm telling the driver of the boat to move it in certain positions so I can get the shot that I'm actually looking for. And it's very satisfying when you get the shot you're looking for, when you're out there in the wild and you think of these things, and then they come out, and they come out fantastic. Okay, so there's something to that. But here's a really good example of leading lines. Okay, the trees, they all come down to the ground, to the bear. All right, and then you have this black river leading into the bear. And I waited for this shot for a few days when I found the spot, and there was a lot of bear activity, and all I wanted was a bear to cross the log bridge. And so all that was important really was to get that bear sharp. Okay, because all the lines converged right on that point. And so it was very easy to make this image very successful. I mean, everything was lined up before the bear even came in. And so, again, another successful moment where I really knew if a bear walked across this, it would really be a fabulous photograph to look at and stare at. Let's talk about a leading line some more. This image, the wing is the leading line. And what works and what makes this image work is how sharp the face of this vulture is. Okay? All right, by getting those eyes sharp, your eyes really go right to the bird. And then when you look around, you have that really beautiful leading line of the wing, and they come back down with the swoop of the feathers. And so they all aid in looking at the eyes of the vulture. And I think that's important when you're taking pictures, to realize that these things are happening to your viewers. They're noticing the sharpness of certain sections of your image. And so it's important that the lines converge on that sharpness. So think about that when you're taking your photographs. All right, and that's important. So here's an image from far away, and I believe that there is a leading line that comes out of the foreground and then kind of turns into the footprints of the animals. And when I take an image like this and I make the animals really small in an image, it's because I really want the viewers to get close to the image. I want them to look and see what I'm photographing, okay? To bring them in closer, and then get them to back off and see the image as a whole. Yes, the bison are walking into infinity, and there's a storm brewing, and they're walking right into it. There's a story there, and I feel like that's important and a very integral part to your image-making process. And so this is why I'm sharing it with you today. The shot list works with everything in photography. It really does. And so I think it's important to realize that. All right? So again, one more with leading lines and how contrast and sharpness bring your eyes to the subject. My subject's all the way on the bottom of the image. And hopefully the effect works where you're always looking and ending up down on the elk with that sharp point rack, okay? There's a lot of slope to the hill in the background, and it's very black and white from the storm, and there's very little color in the snow and in the evergreen trees. But the elk is on this really broken up part where the grass shows. And this was photographed in Yellowstone, where a lot of the ground is warm and it will heat up the snow and melt it, and the animals can come to graze in those spots. And again, I use these to my advantage because it's all of a sudden a stark change in color in the image, and your eyes just are immediately attracted down to the bottom. And that's the idea and how I'm trying to manipulate my viewers' eyes to make my images even stronger. Okay, that's the idea. All right, let's talk about something different. And we're going to move right along as this goes because we can't dwell on things forever. And we'll take questions at the end, like I said. But here's something that goes along with color elements in an image. I like this image a lot because it's a turkey vulture, and they're not the prettiest animals and prettiest birds in the world. But to me, this turkey vulture looks beautiful above the fall foliage. So I go to a very special place in New Jersey that has these palisades. It's called the Palisades. And I can get 500 feet off the ground and shoot down on the birds. And that's a really interesting view. First, you're always, and most people are always looking up at the birds, 90% of the time. You're never looking down at the birds. And as I know, birders love a topside view of these primary flight feathers. I mean, they love it. And only certain turns when you're on the ground can get you a photograph of those primary feathers. And so by getting up high on the mountain, I'm able to shoot down. And again, the color harmonies of this is what really brings it together. Okay, the red head of the vulture matching the reds of the foliage down below. Okay, so often I get up early in the morning to get these morning colors. It's really paramount to get up early before sunrise and get to your locations before the sun comes up, and then hang around only for a little while. I don't spend too much time after the sun is out taking pictures because the most interesting light is at the first few, maybe the first hour to two. And the same thing goes for sunset, okay? That's where you're going to get the most successful images. And that goes with this one too. I'm walking along the beach early in the morning and I stumble across an Arctic owl down here in New York, which happens every year, but it is still rare. And it's an awesome sight. It's a beautiful animal. And so the sun is rising and it's lighting the clouds in the background. And I'm lying on the ground, so I'm kind of looking up at the owl, which is really interesting. And if you don't look at the birds and you kind of mind your own business, these animals will not flee. They really won't fly away. It's an Arctic bird. Some of them may not even have seen a human before. And so they're not so afraid all the time. And they're kind of bold. And they'll hold their ground if you don't walk right at them and stare at them. Then they get the feeling that they're being watched and hunted. So keep that in mind when you're searching for birds. Again, another one with color elements. And I've been shooting pictures a long time. And back when I was photographing film, it had these properties where the film would fall apart during certain times of day or even at night, where it was the color would just fail. It was called color reciprocity failure. And digital photography kind of takes on those qualities and those properties. And so that's what's happening here. I'm photographing this elk in the perfect sunlight, and that's why the snow in the foreground is perfectly white. But the background is also snow, but it's in the shade. All right, and because of the color temperature variance, the shade makes the snow look blue. And so it made for this awesome background. I felt like there was a wave of water in the background of my elk in Yellowstone in the middle of this volcano. And so I thought it was very interesting. But just the play on color was the idea here and the example I wanted to show you. The same thing here. It's a huge color element here of orange. Forget the story. Every picture has a story, and I could go on forever telling them, and they're exciting every time. For instance, when I pull up to this with my car, there was nothing there, and I hit the brakes, and the squealing of the brakes popped all these heads up like Jurassic Park. All of a sudden, there's deer everywhere, and they're looking at what was that noise. And so I stop and I photograph right from the car immediately, and I frame the deer in the foreground with the deer in the background, and it comes out really nice. But it's the color element here that really, really, really works. Kind of a monotone golden image.
On that, we have a question from a viewer.
Sure, I'll take it.
Nice images got different perspective of the use of prominent backgrounds in the images, still keeping interest in the object. How do you decide which image to go with black and white and which one as a color picture?
All right. That's an excellent, excellent question. And I think really, really well put. So it is tough to choose a black and white, but often they jump out at me when they need to be black and white. Usually it's because the contrast is great and that aids a black and white picture. Often it's about the story, about what I'm looking at that will aid into a black and white picture. And I usually find that images that can't be exposed perfectly all the time end up being fantastic black and white pictures. Just because I can't get something perfect from highlight to shadow doesn't mean I'm not going to photograph it, but I'm going to do my best to get it. And sometimes those lay themselves to the best black and whites, funny enough, because of the contrast and the light. But it's an interesting, that's why it's a great question, because the images usually sing to me, and I use that word sing because the images don't speak, but they speak to me and they tell me this image needs to be black and white. And there are a few coming up, just like the bison one, where there was also no color in the image. It's white snow with a black fur and maybe some brown in the fur. And so those browns can be tones. And right away, I think they tell me go black and white. There's no color here anyway to show an image like this. How could I take the color out? How could I do that to the viewer? It's incredible. The glowing orange is out of this grass. To me, really sing. Don't change this to black and white, if that makes sense to the question here. So yeah, it depends on the image. It depends on the contrast of the image, and definitely the colors in the image, because all of the things that I'm going through are elements that I want you to put in your images to make them sing like these. I'm hoping they sing to you like you've noticed, and I appreciate the compliment, because that's what I am always going for. I'm like, when I come up to these scenes, all I'm saying is what on the shot list will make this scene look the best. All right. I think that kind of puts it in perspective.
And one more question. Did you plan these images, or is it that you are observant and think of composition in the field?
I am always thinking of composition in the field. In fact, it's so much different than these days to photograph, because it's become the world's most favorite hobby. Photography is the world's most favorite hobby. And so there's a lot of people out there you have to share these grounds with. And years ago, I don't think I was even as good as I am today, and that's boasting a lot. But in a way, you grow. Everybody should be growing at all times. You're learning. So I feel I'm better than I was. And so, yes, I am composing on purpose. I am all about, if you really want to know, all about my backdrops. If the backdrop is awesome, the foreground is going to be pretty good, because I'm going to be photographing the foreground, right? I'm just going to compose it with the background. So like this image that I just put up, it was all about the backdrop. There was a dead palm tree. And the dead palm tree, not only the color, but even the angle of the palm tree mimicked Mother Egret and the angle of her beak and the color of her beak. And so I really thought that played on each other very well. And so I knew it. As soon as I saw the palm, I'm like, I got to get this nest in front of this palm, and then I got to wait for the perfect moment. And then, of course, all the other techniques apply. Look at the highlight details. And when I say highlight details, the white feathers, okay? There's feathers in the sun here, and there's feathers in the shade. And I make sure I don't lose any detail in that white. So the techniques are there, as well as the idea, as you've asked. So I am definitely conceiving everything I do. In fact, these days, I feel stuck up because I don't shoot everything I see. I try to enjoy a lot of scenes when I don't think they lead to a great photograph. And that does happen. When does that happen? When backgrounds are too close to your subjects. Okay? Let's look into this deeper. The background here is definitely 50 feet away or so. And so it goes out of focus into what's called bokeh, right? And the more bokeh, the more creamy that bokeh, the more your foreground is going to pop right off the page. Okay? And so I'm looking for deep backdrops right away. And even though they don't always come up, okay, you got to pick your perches and then hope, and pick your locations and go back to them over and over until you get the shot you're looking for. That is what I do. I hope that helps. So this image really explains that well. So the background is out of focus, and I don't want your attention on the background. I just want it to flow with the foreground, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so here's another scenario. And we were talking about color elements, and I think everybody understands it now for sure. And I really appreciate the questions, because it allows me to talk deeper about what we're speaking about, and I think makes a greater understanding for everybody, because the idea here is to share information, not just the images, but the information, so that you become better photographers. And then hopefully the images just help you understand the wildlife better, and we all want you to treat them better and fight for them and speak up for them, because like I always say, the animals have no voice. We are their voice, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about depth. And we just spoke about it at the end of my explanation. I spoke about bokeh. And so the bokeh here is awesome. And that's when I'm talking about deep backdrops and how they go out of focus. And look at how this owl pops right off that background. Now it's aided. The highlight around here is called a rim light. And why is it called the rim light? Because the sun is highlighting it all the way around the rim of the animal. We try to create this light in wedding photography all the time by putting flashes behind the bride and making their veil pop. So we're creating light like this. Like I said, this shot list works with all kinds of photography and will allow your images to become way, way better. I mean, you'll be searching for this stuff, and you're gonna come out with really great finished products. All right, so that's what you're looking at, this deep background, which goes way out of focus, and then the sharp foreground. And then in the lighting scenario, even though the animal's lit from the back, it's low sunlight, it's late afternoon, and the foreground has this white sand, which does reflect light in the foreground and lights the subject, so it's not a silhouette. Okay, and we're going to talk about a silhouette in a minute here because it's the opposite of that. And here's one more with a great bokeh. So the background is infinite. It's well over 100 yards away. It's all grass. And I have this awesome black-winged kite in Africa. And I mean, the moment I saw it, I knew I had to get it on that perch. The trick was getting to it without it flying away. And like I said, there's technique to that. Don't look the birds in the eyes. Try to know where the bird is in reference to the backdrops, because that's what's important to me. So that you can get the photograph that sings all around, okay? Not just the foreground, but it goes with the backdrop. And so there's color harmony here. You know, the feet of the bird, the nose of the bird, and even those little feathers by the neck all match the backdrop, and it really works. All right. All right, so here's a little different lighting. This is in shadows and contrast. So we're out of depth, we're out of color elements, and we're into shadows and contrast right now. And so I see this screech owl in Florida, and it's out of the hole. I've never really seen in New York. I never see a screech owl out of the tree cavities. They're always sticking their heads out or perched right at the opening. And here's one in the woods, and it was terrible lighting. But there was no way I didn't want to get this bird without, I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Okay, the bird is out of the hole. I have to get it. So I had the camera trained on it. And what happened is the wind started acting up, and the light would brush the face of the animal and the body animal. And it was really spotty and not really conducive to good light. But when it spotlighted the eyes, it worked really well. Okay, because it was kind of like, I think back to my other job, my wedding photography that I do on the side. And I spotlight my brides as well. And I use smaller lights just to light their heads so that it fades into the darkness. So it looks like when they're dancing that they're in a spotlight. And this reminded me of it. And so that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing this in the wild like I see it at home. And all I have to do is get it sharp and wait for the moment that the light brushes his eyes. That was the key. Only the eyes needed to be sharp because the eyes are incredible on this bird. And mostly on all animals and anybody, the eyes are the doorways to the soul. So you need to get them sharp, and you need to romance the eyes, okay, of all your subjects. Very important.
Yeah.
All right. This is a great contrast one as well. Was there another question?
No.
No. Okay, great. Okay, so this was another contrast and shadows image as well. The sunlight is hitting the fox and the land around it, but in the background is the forest, and the forest is all evergreen. It's very dark, and because the sun is not hitting it, it goes very dark. And so when I'm seeing these things, I'm actually exposing for them. When I teach a technical class, I always teach histogram, and I teach expose to the right. And even if you don't know what that is now, it's all these techniques to make the image better quality when you're done. And in this case, I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm photographing the highlight detail, and I want it saturated so that the background goes even darker. So I might underexpose the image a little, okay? Just so the background goes even darker. Okay, because you can work this stuff after in Lightroom, but the idea is to get it right in the camera. And so like the bokeh, the animal tends to pop right off that dark background. It's really stark, all right? So you just want to get the highlights right and the sharpness right, and the image will really sing like this, right on the edge of that cliff, okay? And really, it's not a cliff. It's actually a plow line to the road, okay? But you can fool people with crops. And as long as the image is beautiful and they're willing to look at it and stare at it, you're becoming successful in what you're creating. Here's another example of that. Okay, and the story was great. This owl was really close to a crowd of people right off the road in Yellowstone, and it was almost ugly because so many people were photographing and stopping on the road. And anyway, the owl decided to fly further away. And immediately every photographer is running and walking fast to try to get a new perspective on the new perch. And I waited because when I saw the tree it was flying to, I saw that it was highlighted by the sun. And I wanted to stay far away so that I could get that highlight on the whole tree and how it fades out and how it really pops off that dark forest background. And I remember seeing it and I knew I wanted to capture it, and I knew it would be perfect for this example. So it's kind of funny how things work out, but it's a really fun image to look at and successful because of the way I decided to capture it. Here's something different, but still talks about shadows and contrast, but it's a silhouette. And I know everybody really knows what a silhouette is, but the idea is to notice these things when you come upon them when you're outdoors. All right. And in this case, the background has to be lit by the sun or be brighter than the foreground. And that's really all there is to it. When I saw this scene, I was so far away. In fact, this is a 1200 millimeter lens, a 600 with a 2X shot from really far away. And we were on snowmobiles and I stopped our convoy and I pointed it out to everybody, and nobody really wanted to take out a camera because they didn't really see what I was seeing, and it was so far away. But the idea is, you know what I'm photographing because of that center animal. And the more separated these animals are, the better, because you want to be able to tell what you're photographing, okay? You want to see all extremities in a silhouette because they help aid in the story of what you're seeing. I hope that they tell you that I'm photographing a buffalo in the steam and in the snow. And so the idea here is you don't want to get them all bunched up in a crowd. You won't be able to tell what you're seeing. So separation is very much key on a shot like this. Here's another one, a little more mysterious. You can't really see the detail of the animal, but you probably know what it is from the outline. Okay, and then that really becomes about the landscape and the steam and the eeriness of that winter scene with the wolf walking in. But it's still a kind of a silhouette where the light is hitting the backdrop, and I expose for the backdrop, okay? And the wolf falls into a silhouette where there's no detail at all in his fur. Here's a really good rendition of it, okay? So I'm out in Africa, in Kenya, and in Kenya, you're on the equator. All right, so sunsets are super fast. They go straight down. They don't elongate like here in the north in New York, where they just skim along the surface and the sky is beautiful for an hour. This is a 15-minute ordeal. And so you need to set up your backgrounds before sunset comes. You need to set up the trees or the animals you want in the foreground and then take them as is. Otherwise, you're chasing it and you really never find what you're looking for. So you have to set this up. And ultimately, I lucked out because I'm setting up a tree here with a sunset. There was no line. The line just walked in over the horizon. Pow! You have this amazing image. And thank God for it, because it was really something that I probably wouldn't even show otherwise. It just becomes a tree and sunset otherwise with the sunset. But this really makes the whole image come alive. And that's why you're seeing it today. And the sun, as long as I get that lion's silhouette with all four extremities, you can tell it's a lion. I'm pretty sure you can have the idea that that's a lion and not a leopard or a different kind of cat. All right, same thing here.
Even in that previous image, we have a question.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Vibhav, how much foreground is important for you in the image?
It depends on the image. It's a good question. Every image is different, and I try to approach each scene as its own entity. Now, sometimes I'm going to take more than one image. This scene is probably 4 or 5. And so each image does depend on that. And then I'll edit the right one. I do talk about this in another program where I actually show you a series of images and why I picked the one I pick. Everything has to line up properly. Everything has to lend itself to the image, the quality, and the flow. All right. I need your eyes moving around the image properly. Even the way the lion starts at the sunrise, I have him walking through the sunrise, but it ruins it's the sunset. It ruins the sunset if the lion's in front of it. So it has to share it in the image. Okay. And they need their own space. And then when I photograph these animals, I actually wait till they usually take a step forward with the front paw. And not in this case, but it's usually the back paw, the far paw, so that all 4 legs will be in view, right? And that's something that works for bears and cats and dogs. So it's good to know. It's a great thing. But let's go back to the question about framing. Foreground, it depends on the image. In this case, it looked like it was a slight slope and there was a crested hill because the line wasn't there and then it was there. And so the crest, I think by cutting and cropping off all the foreground, it helps you realize that there might be a cliffside to the back end of that image. And so that's what I'm trying to aid in. It's hard to explain, but every image is different. And it may come to cropping after the fact. So I may take a wider shot and then crop it later. It does depend on editing sometimes. Again, I like to get the shot in camera because then there's less time after I'm spending staring at a screen. Yeah. All right. And time is money in our business. So you want to spend the least amount of time on it. But okay, so we're trying to get it right in the camera. That's all I'm sorry to say.
Okay.
But look, there's a lot more foreground in this. And so there's a couple of problems. I try to get as low as possible. But in Africa, you're really not allowed out of the vehicle. There's so many things that can kill you. Poisonous snakes, a stampede, something that you don't see. Anyway, they don't really allow it. You can make it happen here and there, but it really doesn't happen. So you either want to get the camera out of the window and point it up, or you want to take it as low as possible out the door, whatever you can do. I like to lay on my belly if I'm outside. But here in Africa, I'm in the car. So the key is to try to get the horizon under the belly. All right, so the animal looks tall, looks gargantuan, because it is. And the lower I am, the bigger the animal will appear. And so being up in a car does not help the situation at all. All right, and then, yeah, getting the grass falling out and the moment with the curled elephant trunk is important to me. It really is. Getting the extremities is important to me. I think I missed the tail, but again, all 4 feet, they are there. All right, and that is important to the image. I just want everybody to know that. Otherwise, it becomes a blob. You may know because of the trunk and the tusk that it's an elephant, but it becomes a blob and less readable to the viewer. All right, here's one more silhouette, and this was a choice to make this black and white as well, and it was a stark contrast. I could get the colors of the background, or I could get a silhouette image. There was really no way to get the animal without blowing out the background to pure white and just shooting for all shadow details. And that kind of ruins the image because the backdrop was gorgeous. And so I tried to get the landscape of the image with the owl in the nest, with the baby owl in the nest, and the eeriness of the setup. It was really an osprey nest and a well-known osprey nest, but the owls took it over. And so most photographers are out there in the morning photographing. And I was out there in the morning too and getting shots with the sunrise on the owls, and they're beautiful. And if the earlier you came, the more you see the mother. But I would come in the afternoon to check it out. And yeah, sometimes after sunset is what I was looking for, where the colors would really pop in the sky. But I wanted to get the sun in the background and see how that would look, and then ended up with this one. And I think it's wonderful. The clouds kind of frame the image. Okay. And I think it's eerie, it's Halloween-y, it has a lot of things going for it, and I think it really went well, and it's better than the color image. It's just better.
Yeah, we have a Scott. We have a question from Steve Milberg. A question on cropping. Do you notice difference in crop frame Canon full frame? Do you notice difference in crop from Canon full frame and Olympus, the 4:3 frame of a photo?
Well, what's interesting about that question is a good question, because I use Canon and I use Olympus, and the Olympus is a 4/3 and a Canon is a full frame system. What's great about the Olympus is you can set the camera to any format you want. You can do full frame inside that micro 4/3. It can emulate it, in other words. So even though it's cropped, you're technically not crop sensor, even though it's a smaller sensor. Again, it's hard. Let me put my finger on it correctly. When I shoot a 300mm lens on an Olympus, it's a 600mm, okay? And I use the lens for that reason, because it's getting the birds just like I would use a Canon 600mm, okay? So I'm using the crop sensor with the proper lenses, and I don't really notice any difference in the framing, okay? I think that covers that part of the question. The framing is similar with the right lens. And if you use the equivalent and the mathematical equation that equals them. So it's really half for the micro 4/3. So I'm not really getting a crop out of it, so to speak. I'm just using the lenses in equivalence to what I would use for Canon, and it looks the same. But when you're using the Olympus, you can change the format. You can change it from 4x6 to 8x10 to 16x9, and I find that kind of neat because you're again, you see it in the frame that way when you're looking through the camera, and you can compose for that format, which is interesting. With the Canon, you can't do that. I'm not sure if they're doing that on their mirrorless yet because I haven't gotten to it yet. But that's, I think, the best answer I can give you, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move along to reflections. Okay, we're out of the silhouettes, we're out of shadows and contrast, and we're moving along on the shot list to reflections. Okay, and reflections are always great photographs. In this case, it wasn't so much about getting the reflection of the animal, but the reflection of the colors of the backdrop, the sky, to the mountains, to the beach, and then to the bear. And so I thought that was super interesting in the reflection of this particular image. I'm photographing from out at sea inland. When the tide goes out in Alaska, it can go out up to a mile. And you have this opportunity to go out and photograph into shore, which is super awesome. Okay, the mountains with the shoreline and some of these reflections as well. The bear is eating a clam, and they sniff these out at low tide and find them just by scent alone and eat them. Often they eat them on their paw. They'll pull them out and then set them up on their paw, and so that they don't get sand in them, and eat them right off their paw like a table. Here's another reflection, more of an abstract reflection. So I'm showing you a different type of reflection. In this case, it's kind of an ink blot, but ultimately these beautiful lines in the reflections lead themselves to a very sharp point in the image. And hopefully that's where you realize, oh, it's an awesome flamingo. And then back to the whole thing as a whole. And then you go have fun with the ink blot again. And so those are the ideas when I'm photographing this. And this is the same group that I photographed earlier in Ambicelli, that one with the infinite background and no horizon. This is just later in the day where the sun came up and burned off all that clouding and all that fog. And now I have a completely different photograph. And so that's what I mean. You have to come at this image when you see it differently than the one you saw before. You're going to have a horizon line, so I'm not going to shoot that. I can't get out of the car, so I can't lay on my belly. I'll scare the birds away, or I'm not allowed to do it, so I can't do that. So I have to figure out another way to make an interesting image with the subject I have. And so I'm thinking foreground and ink blot. And so that was kind of an answer to a question that came in earlier, and how I handle each situation differently as I come at them. And that's why the shot list is supposed to help you, because once you have this in your head, you're like, oh, I can get the textures and I can get the bokeh because there's no background. And you got to think like that as a photographer. You can't just start documenting. That's a great way to say it. Sure, we can document what we see, okay? And anybody can document what they see these days with their camera. We're looking to push this beyond that to a wildlife fine art, okay? That's what I'm hoping. Because when you come across these moments, I want you to capture the moments for what they are. This took my breath away. This is seeing a wolf off the side of the road. It's so rare that, because they're hunted by everybody in America. They're like the most wanted animal. And unless you're in a state park or where they're protected, they're in danger. And so this moment where he picked up his head and the water's dripping off his mouth and the reflection, it's just incredible. And so I have to capture that moment as best as possible to share it with you. And it's not an easy capture. There's sunlight hitting the backdrop here. I had to work on the backdrop. Very difficult, because the wolf is in the shadows. And the picture is all about the shadows here. And the moment that wolf looked at me, all right, that was everything. When I stopped the car, it stopped drinking. I may have interrupted it, but I have my camera on my seat at all times. Because something like this, you can't replace it. You're going on a trip, you're spending a lot of money. Be ready at all times is my advice. Okay, so this is more on the lines of patterns and repetitions, and you see that a lot in nature all the time. This was a lucky day for me. I went out on a super moonrise. We had one last night, and I'm thinking everybody that I know is going to the lighthouse for the same shot, and that's why I always go for the wildlife. Because it's going to be different. Even if somebody was standing next to me, they may not have captured this exactly the way I captured it. I knew that these flocks would be flying in over the water, and I knew the moon was rising over the water. And I always go to the beach for my moon rises and sunrises because there's a clear view of those things. There's no trees in the way. All I have to worry about is my foreground, which is usually the animals, and getting there at the right time and the right angles. Okay, so I'm looking for these moonrises and sunrises all the time to photograph into. They're very important to me. And this one is really all about the pattern and the repetition of the birds. Some of them have fish in their mouths, but the pattern is really kind of a wave. And what you don't see is right underneath them is the ocean, right underneath them. The moon was getting too high in the sky to capture both. I'm at a big lens to capture the birds. Here's another nice repetition. So I'm on the same zodiac as I was with the eagle that we saw with the waterfall. And it's a different location. It's much later in the day. The sun is out. And you come across this, and it's just interesting. You have each seal is kind of laying a little different, and one's waving in a way. And it's just a lot of fun to see these repetitions. And so I capture them. And I try to think, well, this will be better than singling out one, perhaps, and maybe put a smile on somebody's face, because it's certainly something we don't see in New York every day. The same thing here, and this goes along the lines of kind of framing my images along with the repetition of the animals in the background. It's an amazing story. What I'm watching here is I waited 4.5 hours for these cheetahs to stop sleeping and do something, okay? And during those 4 hours, herds of animals would come and go, and you'd certainly want to see some action. And finally, when this cheetah got up, there was 5 cheetahs working together, but only one cheetah got up, and it walked right into the middle of the herd on purpose. And so the herd here is kind of ganging up together to make themselves look big and rowdy, and something the cheetah doesn't want to mess with, which is common. And I'm trying to wait for the cheetah to walk right into the middle of that frame with the gallery behind them, protecting themselves and ganging up. And what was amazing is this cheetah really wanted to cause chaos. And that's what it did. Once one animal started to run away, they all start to run away. And that's when the cheetah picks out the weak one, and he waits. And once these animals are 700 yards away, and the cheetah just decides to run and catches them in a blink of an eye, like a speeding bullet. We take off after it, and we're left in the dust in our safari vehicles. We could not possibly keep up. And he caught the animal he wanted, and it was an amazing experience. But finding these moments are what I'm looking for, and that's difficult. So I feel that this really works, getting the animal, again, centered this time, but with the peanut gallery in the background ganging up, and it kind of all works itself to the image, I hope. And that's the idea. Here's another one that has patterns. If you don't realize it, and this is what I love about this image, is the cubs are copying their mother to a T. Each one of them has the same paw up as their mother. Some in the exact same motion, that one on the right. And so I'm actually found this on a quad, and I'm behind the quad with the camera on the quad for stability, and I'm scared because the mother protecting its cubs could be dangerous, and it's approaching me, and there's really nothing I can do now. And as it approaches, I'm getting nervous, and I can see the bear is nervous. You can kind of see this bear is not vicious, it's scared. And that's not because of me, it's because there are big grizzlies in the area, and the cubs are in danger from the larger animals in the area. They could be taken and force the mother to mate again, things like that, and it doesn't matter. But the moment was everything, and I had to keep brave and calm as this bear approached with its cubs and not cause a scene. But the moment I took one step back and snapped the branch, they were into the grass, never to be seen again. So it's just interesting, and they may look scary to you, but they're probably more scared of us. And when I photograph bears, you need to know, because if you're going to go out and do this stuff, you need to know that bears have different attitudes in different areas of the world. When I go to Yellowstone, the bears are hungry, and they're fighting for every morsel of food they can find. And so they're dangerous, and they're called grizzlies for a reason. But when I go to Alaska, where this was captured, the bears are fairly fed well. They have plenty of fish and food to eat, and they don't see humans as really an enemy or on the menu. And so you can end up in these close proximities with them without really worrying for your life. That being said, we always have bear spray, and we are really looking to get this close. I'm still using a very large lens, a 400 millimeter with a connector on it, but it's an awesome moment. All right, more patterns, more repetitions, more natural frames, okay? I thought about this before I went to Africa. I wanted to catch a baby zebra with the mother behind it to frame it in stripes. And so it's fantastic when it happens, when you're there and you're aware of what you want, and then you capture it perfectly. I would frame this, and I would not use a mat. I would use the stripes as the mat. And I love it. I love what happened, where the mother continued to go around, and I was so excited. I'm like, this is it. This is it. And so you capture this wonderful portrait. Great repetitions and stripes, patterns in the stripes, awesome sharpness on the fold, very important, and then that awesome background and stripes. So it all lends itself to the picture. It was preconceived, yes, and awesome when you're able to capture it. Really, really self-satisfying. And I hope you like it as much as I do. Another natural frame, okay? A screech owl in a hole. This is in a palm tree. I really like the patterns on the palm tree, but I centered it, okay? So I'm using different elements that we've talked about, different elements and different parts of our shot list, and stacking them for better photographs. All right, so yeah, I'm centering it because of the ergonomics of the tree. It's perfectly centered in the tree, and the patterns are really good, and the owl comes out, and so that's the reasons for centering it. And again, I'm looking for natural frames, and this is an easy one. Where this one's a little different, it's still an owl in a natural framing of the cavity of the tree, but know your stuff when you see this. All right, the owl's sitting on eggs, and if I stay there too long, or if the owl's afraid and he flies away, the eggs could get stale. And so when you see something like this, you have to have the discipline to take a picture and walk away and come back in 3 weeks, because once the eggs hatch, the owl will not abandon the babies. Okay, it will always come back to them. So it's all about discipline here, but still, this is about framing the shot. I think I have one more or two more for you where framing is important. And you see this all the time in the wild, all the time. I'm literally sitting on a deck in Alaska at the place I was living, and the bears are walking around, and this one came in between the trees, and I instantly thought, it's framed, and get the shot right now, and you don't have to get a mat for it because it's framed in trees. So these are things that I am thinking about when I'm taking pictures. Again, this is a heavy crop, but the idea is one and the same. And I'm really grabbed this one to aid in the class and show you that you can frame it in not just one line. It could be clouds, it could be a bunch of logs, it can be anything in the foreground to frame the animal, just to make the image more interesting, okay? That's what we're talking about. I want the viewers to look at my images longer. I want them to appreciate them longer. And I think the art of getting these lines and these frames are helping that factor, okay? Same thing here. If I didn't wait for the moment the second vulture came in, it would just be a portrait of a vulture on a branch, and it would be very uninteresting. It would be a great photograph of a vulture on a branch, and there would be nothing wrong with commending it for that. But now look at it. Look at the framing with the animal in the background. It's awesome. I really enjoy looking at this a lot more, and it's a lot less static than just an animal on a branch. And so that was the idea of the difference between documenting something and waiting for the real moment. So I'm in an incredible place here. A 3-day excursion on snowmobile searching for wolves, and with an incredible success. This story has got out there when I did it, and it was talked about in Yellowstone for about 6 years before some newer stuff came out that was just as good, but it's really rare. And so I'm photographing the wolf pack after the 3rd day, and we got them taking down the bison, and we 8 hours of wolves. But it's an opportunity, okay? Yes, we're having the best time, but there are other things going on, okay? And you have to realize that. So the ravens are stealing, and I wanted to get the story in the story. All right, and that's the same idea with the last shot, with the vulture and with the vulture coming in, the perch after the perch. But yeah, the ravens flying through the action, the wolves eating this bison, and the raven just flying through with the snow falling. I thought was fantastic, and it's a completely different image than all the wolf shots that I was taking that day. And so this is what I'm just trying to say. You have to have your head on your shoulders. This is exciting to me, and I've been doing this since I was photographing on film. This is exciting. It doesn't get old. And so you get excited, and you can't freak out with excitement, because the animals will walk away. They won't stand for it. They won't stay, and they'll disappear, and you'll lose the moment. You have to keep your composure. You have to keep your head about you and really think about, what can I do to make this better and this experience great for my viewers? And that's what I'm doing. I'm photographing as much as I can. So this lends itself to the same thing, a framing with the animal. I get mom in the background with the youngster in the foreground. Just that kind of idea. All right. Baby animals is something I added to this because of expressions. All right. Often you're going to get the best expressions off the baby animals. And baby animals tend to be easier to photograph. Why? They don't move. They don't know. They're not experienced. So like this deer, it didn't know to run from me. It actually knows to stay still and use its camouflage. It doesn't smell. It has no scent to a predator. So they may overlook it. And I almost stepped on it, and I got lucky and photographed it, and I knew it wouldn't move. And it just goes with its instinct. But these animals, like young birds, they don't really realize that there are dangers everywhere. So they're frolicking like babies do, and they're learning their ways as they go. And so you get these spectacular moments. Anyway, lions don't just do this out in the open. Predators may take their babies. Anything from an eagle to another lion can put these babies in danger. And so they find these little nooks, and we have to seek them out. And getting these moments are pretty sensual and pretty rare. And that's why I wanted to show you some of this today. And there's joy in it, okay? Which this image to me shows. You have the hatchling, the broken egg with the hatchling, and then an egg unhatched, and then a magnificent kiss between the birds. All right, these are terns, and they come every year to Long Island to hatch their youngs, and then they fly back to the Arctic. And so I think that this is a spectacular moment for the birds. And this is me speaking up for the birds. They're just like us. They're just like us. I am a big dog owner, and this dog, it leans on every word. I talk to it every day because it leans on every word I say. I treat it like a person, and we need to learn to do that because that is what's happening here. All right, this baby is crying for help because they were walking such a long distance, and we were photographing them for a short part of it because we want to see the moment the mother picks up the baby in its mouth. It's such a moment for every photographer to see the sensualness of a predator like this with the giant teeth pick up its young. But I didn't get that moment, but I did get this when the baby is crying for help and mom is coming to soothe its upsetness. And I think it just leads itself to the human factor of what the animals are like. And capturing this is important. There are stories in it, okay? Look at the hold on the youngster here. There's protection there, okay? I pose brides and people for a living for whatever jobs I do, and the pose matters, okay? Their juxtapositions matters. Their attitude in their image matters. Are they going to cross their arms and look all standoffish? That's the idea here, okay? I can see the body language in the animal, and so can you if you really just look at it, okay?
Yeah.
He's protection of the baby, all right? And watching me, I have my eyes on you, and the baby's like, what am I seeing? And the baby doesn't know better. The baby will come over and play with us if mother doesn't stop it from doing that because it's an adolescent. This is a wonderful one too. All right, so I have an awesome story in the background. All right, a baby hyena suckling off its mother out of the den, very rare. And so we're pulled up to this, and there's another youngster in the foreground checking. Is it safe to come out? Is it safe to come out? Up and down, like a pop-up puppet. And it's just a fantastic moment. And I know everybody around me is photographing the suckling hyena. And of course I photographed the suckling hyena. But the stories in the foreground is the coast clear. And I just love that part of the wildlife photography. This is what I'm looking for all the time. Is I'm pretty sure no one on the trip got this shot. And I was not a leader of the trip, so I don't have to be telling everybody, hey, get this, get this, get this. I'm literally thinking, how can I make my images better than everybody else? When I lead a trip, we point out everything, folks. That's what leaders do. That's what expedition leaders do. Anyway, there's sensualness to this, okay? And there's story, all right? Mother and daughter, okay? Look at the hold in the trunks, all right? The cradle. It's not a badger. It's not pushy. It's love, okay? And that's where I'm asking you to look. Now, there's more to this love in this image than you're seeing. There's foreground. There's midground. There's background. Okay, I'm taking pictures of elephants all day. This one stands out. Okay, this one stands out for the love in it and for the multiple focus layers of backdrop. Okay, I am realizing that all the time. Backdrops matter in your images, paramount, in fact. Okay, all right. So an awesome moment with fox cubs, fox kits. This is right here on Long Island. Baby animals will always sell, will always get people's heart, and will always capture the minds and the ideas of youngsters. So Always photograph this stuff, and the best time is in spring. And if you really do a little studying, you'll see that this goes out through America, through all the world, and you can literally go south in Florida, start spring in March, and then drive up to New York and get April in New York, and it's just like March in Florida. It just moves north with the seasons, okay? And you can literally maximize your time with this kind of wildlife photography if you know how to follow the seasons and the birth of the young. Okay, and it starts with the great horned owls every year. They start in January and then followed by other animals as you go. Here you go, more baby animals. Look like reptilian in my opinion, but just a lot of fun to get expressions. And I think we're going to get off this part anyway now because I don't want to dwell on it. All right, one more. This one's way more fun anyway. And I shoot a lot of snowy owls on the beach. And the expression on this is just to die for, okay? And really all this animal was doing is preening itself and just looked up for a moment, and I got this weird look on his face. But it lends itself to the image because people can relate in the expression. All right. Yes, babies when it's mothers. So sensual moments is what I'm looking for. Let's get past that. Okay, we're back to other things. That's what I wanted to do. So we're talking about lens flare now and shooting into the sun and the moon, which we spoke about a little bit earlier, which is something I like to do. We're back in Africa and sunrise. All right. And of course, we're going to stop for moments like this. Okay. Always trying to get the sun in the background because you can't do it at any other time of day. All right. The sun up high will burn your eyes if you look at it with a big lens, and it's not good lighting. It's too contrasty. These are the times you want to go out, and this is the moments you want to capture. The colors that come out with these low light sun and mornings is incredible. So another one. This one's awesome. And again, I'm really got to photograph carefully here. I'm actually overexposing my backgrounds by 2/3 of a stop. I'm doing that so that I can get the shadow detail. Now that's a decision-making process. The sun is low in the sky, so the light isn't that contrasty, so there's no silhouette getting. But I do need the shadow detail, a certain amount of it exposed right on the histogram, so that I can get that sharpness in the fur and no noise in the fur. That's important too. And then what I do is I use Lightroom's gradient to bring back the sky. Okay, so the sky will be slightly overexposed by that 2/3 stop, but I'll bring it back with Lightroom. It's still saved if I shoot in RAW. All right, and I can get these beautiful foreground shadow detailed with these incredibly highlighted backgrounds. Okay. Same thing, shooting in the moon. This is shot at the beach where the owls always are. But yeah, I'm looking for this shot for 10 years. 10 years, I'm hoping an owl will fly in front of the moon. And again, flying towards me, not away from me. Okay. If flying away from me, most people who do this stuff know, hey, you chase the bird. And I don't like to chase birds. I like to wait for them to come to me. In this case, it's a youngster, and the bird is flying early in the evening, and it's looking for food earlier in the evening because it doesn't have the experience to capture at night, perhaps. And so I look for these times where the sun is setting and the moon is rising, where I can get these moments. Yesterday also being one of them with the super moon rise. But again, this is when I go out. I look for this stuff. This is timing at its best, all right? And then it took 10 years, 10 winters, let's just say, of trying to get this image. Owls have flown in front of me, but not like this, where I caught several images and then I crossed it through the moon. And it's hanging in my own house. Same thing, I'm in Yellowstone, and I notice the moon is coming down, and I can see the whole moon, even though it's a crescent, and I can see that there are elk on the ridges. And now the problem is in Yellowstone, you can't just stop and take pictures. There's rangers everywhere, and they'll ticket you, and they will move you. Even if that elk grew wings and flew across your screen, he's going to tell you, stop taking pictures right now and move your car. So you really got to do the right thing, or you're going to mess this up, because you don't want to walk away from your car and then somebody's yelling at you, move your car, and the animals run away and you get nothing anyway. So the idea here is you got to park your car off on a pull-out or off the road and then walk. All right. And then when I'm walking as close to the mountain as I can so the animal doesn't see me walking closer. All right. Because I don't want it to flee. There's so much going on to be able to line this up and get this right. And you only have a certain amount of time because the moon is setting. And so you have that working against you, and you have the animals that could flee working against you. And I was able to get 2 of these shots, one next to the moon and one right in front of the moon. And it's all me adjusting, not the animal, which is kind of neat. But what a cool moment and what an opportunity. And when I get these opportunities, that's the reason I travel, because that you have to go where the animals are to be able to even get an opportunity like this. And so I've spent, I think now 13 years in a row going to Yellowstone at different times a year, sometimes 3 times a year, to get the images I'm looking for. And it's the easiest place in America to go to get images like this as well. Okay, so yeah, we're talking about some sun flare as well. And that stuff comes up, and I used to try to not get it and avoid it at all costs. In fact, the lenses you buy are made to stop flare and to counter it in every way. But then came J.J. Abrams, and his movie making has flare everywhere, and it lends itself to his image making. It really does. He's using it on purpose to create an effect. And so I'm photographing a spirit bear here, and I'm in a rainforest. The sun never shines, and it's breaking through, and I see some lens flare on my lens, and I'm saying, let's capture it. We're photographing this spirit bear, and we got some lens flare. It's feeling spiritual to me, and that's what I'm thinking. At least I'm trying. Now, when I take this shot, I'm not thrilled. The backdrop is so close to the bear, it's not that interesting of an image. It's very flat. It's very two-dimensional, as I like to say. But the flare, to me, lends to the story of the bear. And if you know anything about these bears, they are very spiritual of the area. And so I kept the image, and I like to show it. But again, it's all about capturing the flare and aiding the image, which is hard to do. Here's a little sun flare. And one of those images that said to me black and white when I took it, make this image black and white. It's going to be fantastic. The depth, the light, everything about it, the tones. And so I knew it right away. And I pass this twice a day every time I'm in Yellowstone. And every time it's different. I tend to stop often on it, but this was the one time where I think it was more than spectacular, where there was atmosphere in the tree line. There's light coming at me, and then there's life walking through this dead forest. There's this one bison, which you can see all of his legs. Like I say, I try to capture all of his extremities so that you know what you're seeing. You're seeing some kind of bison, some kind of buffalo. It's important to me. There's a leading line. Right in the beginning, that river goes right to the back of that forest. So it leads you in. And I think that it's very successful. And that's what things I'm thinking. This is one of my favorite images I took recent times. So I'm in Africa, and I see this cloudscape. I call it a cloudscape because that's what I'm seeing. And we're looking all over for animals, and there's nothing to be seen except for this one elephant. And I decide that the sky is almost more important than the elephant. And I think about how I want to make the animal small and get people to look closely at the image. And then I think about the animal. It's the largest land animal there is. And it's a big one at that. But I still want him to look tiny compared to the heavens and the earth. And so this image becomes powerful. And it's sold quite a few times. And it's won a couple of contests. And I knew right away when I saw it that I wanted the sky and the rays. And then, of course, just putting the animal in the right place was the trick. Getting the rays to line right down to the animal was really important to me. And again, I feel that it's heavenly, it's spiritual, and it has a lot going for it. And I knew it was going to be black and white the moment I took it, because there wasn't much color to it. There was sort of a hazy blue sky, just all this fantastic light that was in need of contrast. And so I knew right away. Another one where the background was so important, okay? And we are still talking about, where are we? We're at landscapes. Thank you. Okay, because can't get lost. I want you to know what we're doing here. The whole point is to explain what we're doing on the shot list. And this becomes very important. The landscapes of your images, okay? You don't always have to get close to the animals. I'm shooting all the time with a 600 millimeter, 840, 1200, almost all the time for the birds mostly. But when I travel, I see these grand landscapes, and I try to back off. I try not to get the close-ups that I'm always used to getting around here in New York, where they're spectacular, and you see every detail of every feather, and even in the eyes, you see detail in the eyes. In this case, it's more interesting to get them in their environment. And so backing off and getting a smaller lens is okay. Everybody wants this big lens so that they can get in on the action, but ultimately, this is possible by picking deep backdrops and foregrounds that are fairly close. And in this case, I still had to park the car and walk about a quarter mile to get this picture. I saw the picture as I passed by, and I knew I wanted it, but I knew I had to get it out of the car. I had to walk, and to get it, you can't look at the bird like I explained. I had to walk and ignore the animal and try to line up the background that I wanted, and then turn on it and photograph it immediately. And then once the bird is calm with me, I can photograph it more and more without worrying. And then I have to worry about the traffic. So I knew a car was coming, and I knew the animal would fly, because 90% of the people who see you with a camera in Yellowstone are going to stop and say, "What are you photographing?" because they want to see it or photograph it themselves. And so you got to anticipate this stuff, believe it or not. And I anticipated this person stopping and saying hello to me. And so I had the camera ready for a flight shot. And it was awesome, because as soon as this bird took off, the tree was enveloped in these ice crystals, and they went flying everywhere. And I caught the action, and the lighting was good, and the backdrop was perfect. So it all worked out. And then I answered the guy, because you have to ignore them. You have to concentrate on what you're doing at all times, because if I turned to the man, the eagle would have been gone. So I had to ignore him when he said, "Hey, what do you got?" And then the bird flies. I'm snapping. And then I say, "I'm sorry, I had an eagle." And that's how you have to handle it, okay? Always about the image. This is one of the coldest days I've ever been outside. This is the coldest day I've ever been outside. Negative 57 degrees. When I started out, it was about negative 37, and we get to the park, and they don't want us to go in because no one's working that day. It is too cold for anybody to be out. And we know as photographers and our experience here that the animals get too cold in this temperature too, and they congregate around the hot springs that are in Yellowstone because there's a lot of heat coming off them. And in the mornings, they're covered in this white ice capsule from all the steam coming out of these geysers. And you have to get there first thing in the morning, because once the sun rises, it starts burning it off them. And so we rush in with snowmobiles, we take all the risk, and we find this herd, and it's a great moment. Notice the background layers. There's like a tree background, and then it's even further back, so that there's great depth in the image. There's good sharpness, and there's a moment that you rarely see. So it all lends to a pretty fabulous picture. Okay, so backdrops are very important, and I've spoken about that. And I think that you start to realize why they're important in this seminar here. This is Mount Kilimanjaro. It's on the equator, and it has ice on the top. And this ice has been melting over the years, but it's still an icon to the land. And everybody knows where you are when you capture that spot in the background. So when we see one of these big old elephants, this what they call a big tusker, he's an icon too, okay? So much so that they all have names. And this one is Ulysses. And getting him in front of an icon like Kilimanjaro is a great accomplishment, because they don't always end up in the right place at the right time, at the right moment. And so this is fabulous. It's sunset. The light is outstanding. We have a huge tusker, and I proportion him right with the mountain in the background. And it's really lovely to look at. It's a poster. It can hang on any wall, and it's just beautiful. And it's a special elephant. It's what we're protecting, okay? When you see these elephants, they are watched 24/7 by the Maasai. And it's very rare that poachers get past the Maasai to get to these guys, but it does happen. Another image.
We have a question. In some of the images, I felt like some digital noises are there. Are they purposefully added?
No. Okay. It's a good question and a good comment. Okay. I often will shoot at high ISOs. And the reason I do that is because I'm shooting at low light almost all the time, because that's when the most colorful, the best light happens. The animals are active. All the things happen in low light. And so often, quite often, I have to push my camera's abilities to the edge. But I'd rather get an awesome image than worry about the grain. Now, there are a lot of programs in place, AI, things that take away grain. And I use them sometimes, but not all the time, because I think the grain does lend itself to certain images. But it is a quality that I'm trying to fight all the time by exposing to the right and getting the idea here is when you're taking pictures, you want to take the brightest image possible without overexposing the highlights. Yeah. This entails looking at the histogram so that you don't go over. But the idea of that is sometimes you take a picture that's brighter than the scene you're looking at. But what happens is you're getting the best part of the camera chip. The most information and the best quality are on the right side of the chip there, not in the shadows, but in the highlights. And you can always add shadows and darkness to your image without losing any quality. So why not shoot at the best quality and slightly, not always, but slightly overexpose images the way they look, not overexposing the whites, but just shooting at the best quality the camera can make and then darkening later. Okay, so I try to do that as often as possible. And that is good tech. Believe me, that is how you do it. You can add shadows to digital, okay? And now mirrorless is a little different now too. You really can't do it that way anymore. You have to get your histogram right in the middle, and because you can blow out highlights a little bit, which I've seen. And again, I'm not shooting with too much mirrorless, but I've seen it, and I know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. If you're shooting the digital, regular mirrorless mirror cameras, you want to expose as far to the right without climbing the wall on the right. I'm sorry I don't have a graphic for you right now because I wasn't expecting that. But that's the idea, to get the best quality out of your camera. And yes, I'm shooting at high ISOs that do sometimes introduce grain to my image.
Okay. And when it comes to the bear images, I think he's talking about the bear with the cubs that was walking. Was it shoot from a vehicle?
Say that again. What was
the bear images? The brown grizzly, I guess, walking with the cubs.
Right. I know the image. What was he asking about the vehicle?
Yeah, he's asking, was it shoot from a vehicle or on foot?
If he's talking about me, I had a vehicle, but I'm on foot hiding behind it. And the bear snuck up on us, and we decided to stop the vehicle and step behind it and let the bear go. And normally the bears in that area would just walk by without thinking twice. You just don't really look at them. You don't stare at them, and you stay out of their way. And this one had cubs, so it's a little more dangerous. But that's really all there is to it. We're trying not to get in their way. You know, if you really look at the image, there's around the bend there. It just came around the bend, and we stop, shut it off. Let's get off and let's hide behind it so it doesn't really see us there, and let's let it through. And we didn't succeed in that because I stepped back. I got nervous. I stepped one step back to try to hide a little better, and the bear was out. One sound, and it was just disappeared. And the guide let me know, hey, there are big bears around here. The cubs are in danger, and they're afraid. And so it was obvious. But it was close proximity, and that's because of the area we were in. Only because of the area we were in were we in close proximity, where in Alaska, in some of these places, the bears are just used to people, and they don't care. You cannot do that everywhere. And I really want to make sure everybody hears that. You cannot get close to bears, all right? You need 100 yards at least, and you need the big lenses. That's what you have to do, because the bears are dangerous. And they look like teddy bears. If I tell you, when I'm in the Arctic with the polar bears, and I'm in the backyard of our place and I'm not out yet, and the bears are interacting with me through a fence, I know if they get one paw on me, they'll pull me through the fence. They won't stop until they get me through that fence. And they're touching the fence as gently as they can, and it looks like a teddy bear. You want to pet it. They're so kind, they're so quiet, and so gentle. But the moment they get their paw on you, it becomes a violent act. And that's really what it is. They are saving all their energy for the violent act because it takes effort and it's hard. Yeah. If they fail, they have to do it again, and they starve. And so they have to really be calculated and meticulous about what they do. And when I see it firsthand, I'm blown away. I mean, you literally don't want them to lay a paw on you. They're powerful animals. What you're seeing here is we go to this area for the polar bears because there's a National Geographic Lodge here on the water. And what happens is the polar bears are actually coming and congregating by the water, waiting for the ice to show up. And if you look way in the background on the left of this image, there is an ice pack, and it's getting closer and building up closer to shore every day. And that's the week, every year, that week is consistent with where the ice flows, ice begins. And so the bears start congregating because they go on the ice to start hunting seals, which are hiding in the crevices out of water. And that's how they capture their food. And they're waiting for this moment. And so we travel there that week so we can get them near the water like this. Now, there's a lot of talk of conservation with this, and yes, the ice is receding, and there's less every year, and it's later and later every year, and it is a problem. But it's a problem more in other areas than this area, in different parts of the world than this area. But the scene is one and the same, where we're capturing the bear looking out to the water. It's steaming. It looks like it's hot, and it all lays itself. It's actually negative 35 degrees, and the water is just slightly warmer, and that's why it's steaming up. But the idea is one and the same. The story is everything, right? The ice pack is not to the shore yet. The bears have to wait. And the steaming water looks like global warming. There's a storm in the background. I feel like there's a story that you just have to read into the image more, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm putting information in my images by picking the scenes that I choose to show. All right. So yeah, the landscapes in the background are awesome in framing. They're also awesome in showing environment and showing in what the bears live in, and they show scale. I mean, some of these places are gargantuan in size. The mountains come straight from the sea and right up to the sky, and the bears are tiny in those scenes, and that's interesting to me always. And I'm always able to get them small in these grand landscapes. This is a golden eagle in its landscape as well, up high in the mountains. This is a big animal with claws the size of a grizzly bear. Another shot of the bears in their landscape. So the ice is still forming, and the tides are coming in and out. And so the ice has formed around all the rocks at the bottom of the sea. And this is low tide, where the water is receded. And the bears are now looking into the little caverns and crevices for food, whether it be the clams and little crustaceans or seals that are just born on the ice. Okay, so this is a great image for me, because I like to explain that the scenes we see are stages for the wildlife we photograph. They're literally stages. I compare this to a video game. I used to play a lot of video games when I was young, and the fights that we would have would be on this grand scale scene, all right? And you'd be two guys fighting in the most incredible scene ever. And that's what I saw here. Here's Kilimanjaro, this amazing 20,000-foot mountain on the equator with ice at the top, and these two bulls coming right at each other. And so this goes along with editing too. I took 30 shots of them coming at each other and trying to figure out what's the best position to put them in front of this grand backdrop. All right. And so, yeah, I waited to the moment they touched. All right. One trunk up, one trunk down, kind of a yin and yang, kind of a moment where they're sharing something. All right. They're actually touching, where they're on the other images, they were far apart. And in the next images, they're fighting already. So there is something to that edit, all right, and how I choose the one image. And I'm only going to choose one image. I'm not going to show you the 30 shots that led up to this one moment. I'm going to show you the moment, okay?
Yeah.
It's not so much a video. It's a storytelling image. And you can use a series of images to tell a story, but that's not what I'm after here. I'm after the one you're going to hang on the wall, the one you're going to look up to, the one that shines light on you, the one that really touches your inner heart and your experience. So here, this shows the scale perfectly. And so I'm all the way out in the ocean. The water's receded, like I mentioned. The tide is way out, and I'm able to photograph into the land, which to me is spectacular, right? And that's a tremendous grizzly bear. It's tremendous. You can't tell maybe in this scene, but that's a bear that stands about 8 feet tall, and it dwarfs us. Another great scene. So again, I've backed off. I'm not using those big lenses. I'm down to 400 and 200 millimeter, and I'm anticipating shots like this. When I saw this coyote, I was a mile away from the scene, but I did know Yellowstone well enough that the geysers in the background are very volcanic looking. Let's set up there in hopes the animal will keep coming our way. And it did. And then, by luck, the geyser explodes into action, okay? They're always erupting in Yellowstone. Some of them are hourly, some of them are daily. But you're upping your chances just by putting yourself in this situation. And that's the idea. What I'm trying to convey is, yeah, my backgrounds matter. I don't want to just take a picture of a coyote and document that I saw it. I want to put them in an incredible environment, in an incredible frame that people are going to be impressed with and wowed by. You know, that two-dimensional surface that touches them. And they say, wow, I'm touched by this. This is incredible. That's achievement by us artists, okay? And so I'm using all my knowledge to do it. there's things going on here. The bison are completely black, no detail whatsoever, but they bring your eye right to them. And then I got this beautiful, almost a rainbow-like of fog in the background, steam from the geysers, and the ground is alive. And those beautiful highlights in the water that, to me, that shimmer kind of brings the picture alive. I hope for you as much as it does for me when I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. These are polar bears dancing in the light. And I put this in here for the landscape and the time of day, but the story too. I hope I don't get too caught up on it, but I'm on one of the most fantastic trips of my life, you know, and now I've done it a couple times, but you're there, you spend all this money, and I got some real big pros working with me now, because that's all that show up to this place are the big pros. And nobody's shooting the scene. And I say, well, why wouldn't you take a picture of this? And then, well, all this atmosphere is up and they'll be blurry. And I said, well, I know that situation. Remember when I said the car, when you shoot out the car, the heat can make a plume of heat and make your pictures blurry, or the heat from the engine or a mirage can appear. If you understand what I'm trying to say, the heat can make a shimmer in the atmosphere. And that's what was happening here. It's negative 35 degrees, yes, but the ice is only like 32 degrees. So it's almost steaming in a way. It's hard to explain, but there's heat rising off it. But I think back to my days here with birds of prey on the Palisades with these dark rocks. After 9 o'clock, the rocks heat up and they make a plume. So I would always come on a cloudy day to get the shots that I want. But when I do show up on sunny days, or when the clouds disperse and the sun starts beating down and heating up the rocks to where you can't shoot anymore, I think, hey, when the wind blows, it dissipates that heat, okay? And it pushes it down. And so that's what happened here. Here I have one of Canon's top guys telling me, don't bother, man. It'll never come out. And I'm saying, there's no way I'm not taking this picture. There's no way. I don't care if it's blurry. I'm taking this picture. And then I think, yeah, the wind is blowing like crazy. Let's wait till the wind blows through there and I'll get the sharp shot. And that's exactly what you're seeing. Okay? So you just have to keep your wits about you. You have to think of your techniques. You have to think about how you're photographing and then make it work.
So is that picture taken from a boat?
This one. No, this is taken from land. And this is late in the week of the same trip you saw where the bear was looking out at the steam on the water.
Yeah.
The end of the week, 7 days later, the ice is in. And it's almost like overnight. Overnight, it comes in and it's packed and the bears are out there. And it's a glorious time for them. They're happy. These guys look like they're wrestling. They're dancing. They're thrilled to be out there because now they can eat because the food is out on the ice. So it's a pretty awesome moment. All right, we're moving right along and we're almost at the end. So I hope I don't lose anybody, and I really appreciate your time and listening to me talk about it. It's so much fun for me. We were talking about landscapes, backdrops, the scale, antics, behavior. What about eye contact? Eye contact to me is one of the most important things to capture. It's always great to get the animals in their environment doing what they do, but it's also an amazing feeling to get them looking at you, okay? That kind of puts my viewers where I was when I took the picture. So it's a pretty important thing, all right? It captures them, and they start thinking about, wow, look at this moment, and imagine being there is what I hear when they look at things like this. So I try to capture eye contact a lot, and I try to do it without really bothering the animals. I'm not playing noises. I'm not making antics. I'm just waiting, because if you wait long enough, the animals get used to you being there and they don't mind you being there anymore. If you're not bothering them, if you're not competing with them, and if you're not hindering them, then they just ignore you. You're just part of the landscape. And so that's pretty important. I see I have it backwards, but this is a landscape picture, and I hope there's not too many more landscape shots because I want to talk about eye contact. But let's talk landscape here. You're just seeing a big stalactite, a 5,000-foot rock formation with the Osprey nest on top. And it's in the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. And I'm looking down on it from the road, which was pretty incredible to watch. More on the landscape. Okay, so getting the animal sharp is, of course, utmost importance. All right, and then the idea of shooting a vertical versus a horizontal, really it's all about the lines for me, okay? For me, I definitely wanted to get the mountain range. I definitely wanted to get the colors between the green and the reds. And then, of course, the browns of the animal. But again, it wasn't a wide scene. It was a vertical scene. And I try to follow the lines of the trees with this. Same thing here. I see I got ahead of myself. So yeah, we're still in landscape. I apologize, folks. Same thing here. When I saw this bear in the winter, it's rare to see them in the winter. Bears hibernate in the winter. This one looks like it's headed for the mountains for its final walk. And so the sun is set on the top of these mountains, and it's gorgeous. But the colors that change closer to me, where the clouds are covering the area, it's almost a black and white image. And so I love the transition from the black and whitish foreground all the way to that colored far background. Okay, so yeah, landscapes. We were talking about landscapes, and I got ahead of myself. But anyway, showing the landscape with the animals really is a great thing and imperative sometimes, because otherwise it's just a portrait of an animal. But in this shot, you got the baby following mom on the cliff. I mean, there's a little extra room behind them to walk, but here they're jumping across. I mean, look where the mother's foot is, and the babies follow them. The babies follow them because they're learning the terrain for themselves for when they're older. And that happens with all animals with territory. They learn their territories and they come and go. All right. But yeah, they're walking right on the edge of the cliff here, which I thought was fantastic. Early morning light, landscape. So you're starting to see me stack these elements together, as I mentioned before. Sharp eyes are very important. Okay. Lining up the sunrise light with the animal. All right. And the leading lines of the beach. Same thing here. Landscape, early morning. So I spoke about the times I'm out. It's very important to be out at those hours because that's when the animals are active. All right. And if you look close to the owl, he's even backlit by that fire sky. He's even got some of that color in his face, which is really cool. All right. The weather. I remember that. Weather. Okay. I'm always out in the weather because there's several reasons. Mostly because many photographers do not want to be caught out in this kind of weather. They don't like this. It ruins their equipment. It's dreadful if they get wet. It's uncomfortable. And so I'm always dressed for the occasion. I have all kinds of rain gear for the cameras and for myself. And I pride myself at going out during storms to be able to capture moments like this because they are storytelling moments. All right. These animals, all of them, they have to live and survive and thrive in this type of weather. And so capturing them in these weathers is a kind of important document. All right, and so I try to get them as best I can. This is a falcon on the cliff. It's a young falcon. You can tell by the coloring. Same thing here. But if you notice, the quality of the rain is very different than the last one. This is when you stop the rain in motion with a fast shutter speed. Because the animals were running across the landscape, I had my camera at a fast speed. And so the raindrops are stopped right in motion as little droplets. All right, and you can see that on the dark backdrop. And take note to that. Dark backdrops will make raindrops pop, okay? You can't see a white raindrop on a white sky, but you can see them on a darker backdrop. So just notice that, okay? Take that into consideration. Same thing here, fairly dark backdrop, real rainstorm on the Osprey, super sharp feathers, okay? I'm fairly close to the nest. It was a great situation when this nest was available on Long Island. It's no longer there. But a longer shutter speed to get the long drips of the rain, the drops popping off the bird as well. And you can see some of the winds got the rain going upward and not downward. So there's a lot going on in this image. It's a great portrait. Same thing. I like capturing animals in the rain. And I remember putting this in here for you guys because it's important. I try to get out there as much as I can in the weather because I feel that the images are even more profound than getting them in the sunlight. They're really unusual. And I usually get carte blanche because I'm out there by myself. I can pick my angles, my direction without worrying about anybody in the backdrops. I'm usually out there alone on these days. This is one of my favorites. Capturing this falcon. I knew the perch was one of the falcon's favorite perches. And I got to be honest, so many people know this perch that many would recognize it if it wasn't covered in snow. And so I went out on that heavy snow day. I know everybody's got to plow their driveways, they got a shovel, they're stuck in, whatever they got to do. They're probably not doing this stuff. And so I'm always out. If it's snowing, I am out there. And there's a lot going on here. The snow is falling, but if you notice, the feathers are rising because there's a lot of updrafts coming on that. And so it's carrying the feathers up, but it's snowing down. It was really wonderful. And then that perfect branch was untouched until the falcon landed. So it was really a great timing image. Really fantastic. I was so glad I did that. Same thing here. So I'd go out on this crazy snowstorm day to the beach in hopes to capture a snowy owl in more of its element. And right away, when I found it, it's dancing in the snow, literally enjoying the snow. because back at home, it snows all the time in the Arctic. And so it's kind of a glimpse of the animal in its own environment. All right. They picked the beach on purpose because it's very much like their Arctic area, the tundra that they live on. And so when the snow falls, I really feel that they're at home. Watching this guy made me feel like he was at home. He was comfortable. He didn't care that I was there. He just kept dropping his face into the snow, and you can see that on his face, and just enjoying the snow. So it was a wonderful moment. Same thing here. This was a 4-hour wait for a picture that I knew I would forget if I waited it out. I saw the bobcat. I knew the direction it was heading. I decided to set up in an area that had a decent backdrop. And then I waited and waited. And then the guide went to sleep on the snowmobile. But I would not quit. And finally, the animal showed up, and I got my exclusive shot. No one else has it. And that's why I wait, because I really knew the animal was going to come. And if I waited long enough and was quiet long enough, it would consider me part of the landscape and not even worry about me. I'm not stalking him. I'm sitting down, and I'm just hanging out, taking a nap in the snow. You have to think like that. An animal, if it sees another animal, what's that animal doing? Is it after me, or does it not care about me? And that's their mental capacity. And so I try to think like them. If it's worried about me, I'll play with a branch, pretend I'm eating it or something, just to get the animal off thinking about me. I am not a threat. I love the weather for scenes like this. This was an incredible moment. I'm with a fellow photographer that I admire, and I called him to go out in Jackson Hole. It was one of my first years out there. And he passes this spot every day. And he took me to his favorite spot, and he says, hey, have fun. But what was happening is it wasn't snowing at all when I started shooting this. And when he realized how gorgeous this became, he ran for his camera because he had not seen it in this light, in this kind of snowstorm yet. And so here he is running for his camera because he decided, and he was all humble about giving me the image, but he didn't think he needed to shoot it. And then he's running for his camera. So another reason why to always have your camera. This was the lesson. This was the day I got the lesson. Always have your camera, because I took a video of this, and you can hear him on the video. I got to get my camera right now. And you can hear him running. It's funny, yes, but it was a lesson. That's all. I was there because I was dying to get this. And I asked him specifically, and he brought me to it. And so it was wonderful. I got the only shot of it. It was really good. Another great scene with the snow. I love that I'm showing the snow scenes, because I take these serious, man. When I'm out in the weather, I consider it some of the best shots you're going to get when the weather is involved. Even those storm shots you saw, or even the clouds with the elephant, they're weather. All right. And that's the idea here. So I'm getting the landscape. I'm shooting up the mountain, which is really cool. I'm using my car for the shot. Because the animal is above the car, it kind of looks good because it makes the animal look big. And then the landscape that goes up the mountain behind it, the snow falling, and then him, the bison itself, plowing the snow to get to the vegetation, which is what they do in winter. Baby animals playing, foxes playing. Okay. Getting behavior and antics are awesome. All right. Here's some of the wolves I shot that day. Once they're fed, they're playful and they're happy. And so these are great moments to capture the animals in action and doing their natural behavior, which is what you want to do in the first place. Okay. Is capture them in their natural environment, doing natural things. And so this was a great opportunity when we spent 8 hours with these wolves. It took 3 days of tracking and 72 miles. They covered, I think, 52 miles the first night. The first night. All right, so getting these animals in action are fantastic, okay? These moments really will wow people. You do have to watch out for what you get, because bloody pictures and carcasses are not going to hang on your kitchen wall, okay?
Yeah,
you have to be very, very picky on what you get. So mouths open and roar, and all these angry animals are fine. They start tearing things open. That you really got to know that certain audiences, they're just not for, and they're not for everybody's eyes. Okay, but moments like this are pretty exciting to see them fighting over things and interacting with one another. And so that's okay. And I feel that there's a fine line there. You have to realize that when you're shooting it, because some of this stuff can get very nasty in the wild. It is absolutely a wildlife situation, and it's unpredictable, and it can get gory. similar to this. I mean, these cheetahs caught a hare here, and this I think was called split hares. It was a very clever name when I put it in contest. And it's 3 cheetahs chasing a hare in Africa, and they caught it. I think the mother caught it actually, and then didn't kill it and let the cheetah cubs take over, which was a lot of fun to watch. Probably one of the most crazy pictures I've ever taken is of these wolves. And see how the carcass doesn't lay itself to wall art, but it's an amazing document of what we captured that day. This is the first moment we pull up on the scene, and me getting my camera out as fast as possible, and the first clicks of the camera getting the wolves' attention. They really weren't interested in us until that moment. And then they decided to stick around because wolves do not like people, and they're hunted, they're in the park, they're darted so that they have collars on them so they can track them all the time, and they just don't like people. And we were about 78 yards away, which is close. You were supposed to be at 100 yards, but because the road was there and then there was a snow plow line, we had our lenses right on the snow plow line, we were able to stay all day with it. And what an incredible experience. Here's another one.
One question before we go. While taking images in cold weather, do Arctic mirage play a role in sharpness of the image? How do you overcome it?
Okay, so it's a great question. It's something we all have to overcome. First of all, the camera never comes inside. All right, let me repeat. The camera never comes indoors, especially on the coldest days. Why? Because it's not just the lens that may fog up, and you can wipe that fog off your lens, but you can't wipe it off the chip, the camera chip. And what happens on that fog is the fog, whether you can see it or not, carries some soot, some debris, some microscopic things that are in the air that hold even more when there's fog or condensation on your lens and surfaces. That debris sticks. So if that happens to your chip, you're going to get noise and spots all over your images. And so the trick is, don't bring your camera inside on those coldest days. Leave them outside so they don't have any opportunity to fog up. I take the batteries in, I take the memory cards in, and I leave the camera and lens outdoors. Therefore, I can get right on it when I get out the next morning and I don't have to think. And the batteries are warm. Those are the only things that can run out on you. And they don't always act great in the cold, so I keep my batteries on the inside of my jacket near my body heat so that they are effective when I put them in the camera. Sharpness isn't really an issue if you're following these rules, because it's the condensation that's going to stop the sharpness. You tend, in these cold weather scenarios, it tends to be super clear. Okay, so sharpness is always there. I mean, you're always going to get sharpness unless there's heat. Like I said, the heat plumes that can mess it up, or like I said, the condensation can mess it up, fogging. All right, so by leaving your equipment outside, it never has an opportunity to get condensed air on the lenses. When I go to the Arctic, never comes inside. Yellowstone, it's questionable because some winters aren't as cold as others, and it's not a problem all the time. Also, when I'm on snowmobile in Yellowstone, I put my camera back in the bag, and it acclimates slowly when it comes inside because it's in the bag, and the bag is in the cold all day. So the bag is cold inside and out, and it slowly acclimates when you bring it in. And again, it's not, those days aren't super cold, but these are the techniques, and it's a great question because you better follow these techniques if you want clear, crisp, sharp images, as I pride myself on doing. And I tune my lenses because these are not mirrored cameras, and these are the new things that are out. I use mirrored cameras. They have micro adjustments that you can make so that the lens and camera are optimum. That's how you tune your lens. These are mass produced. Not all of them are exacting perfect, but the camera has the ability to move the mirror microns forward and back to get exacting sharpness. And so I do tune my lenses once a year. I put them through a micro adjustment. It's not hard to do. Anybody can contact me and I can tell you how to do it, or you can send it in, of course, to Canon services and they'll do it for you. But I like to do it on my own eye because that's what I'm using to look at the photographs, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I hope that answered the question.
And one more. The same related question.
Okay.
Does the gear support until minus 57 degrees? And do frost accumulate on lens in these extreme conditions?
Yes. Okay. In that extreme condition, your nose can freeze to the metal camera. and it will pull off skin. Okay, that's just the fact of it. So nose protection, skin protection, eye protection is all necessary in these crazy temperatures, and they are crazy temperatures at times. So yes, frost can build up when you breathe on the back of the camera. Your breath brings frost, and if you start wiping that frost while it is frosty or frozen, you will scratch the back of the camera because the ice will accumulate on your whatever you're wiping it with, and that will scratch the body of the camera or the screen. So you really don't want to be wiping frost off. If you do come up with frost, you have to warm up the lens a little bit to get it off so that it's in a liquid form. Otherwise, you're going to scratch your optics, and so you don't want to do that. Did I answer all that question? I think I'm missing something.
Yes.
Can you repeat it?
No, that's it.
That's it? Okay. All right. Well, it is something to take into consideration all the time. And frost more on the back than the front because of your breath. And yeah, your skin can stick to the metal. So
yeah, and the gear supports minus 57 degrees.
Yes, I've only had one camera break on me in that temperature. And it was something broke inside the camera. I can't say what it was because I never actually found out. But it was electronical. But it's never happened to me twice. The camera gear does handle the cold weather. The batteries have to be changed over, and when the batteries do die out, sometimes you can put them on your body temperature and they'll come back and you can use them again sometimes. And the equipment, the stuff that carries your camera and lenses, that holds up incredibly well. I use certain companies, Think Tank. I use f-stop gear. They're excellent. That stuff is held up on snowmobile 10 years without any problems. In fact, it looks brand new. I'm impressed with some of that equipment. It's Gore-Tex. It's the same as you're using for your ski trips. It's pretty good stuff, and it does hold up to the temperatures very well.
Okay.
You're seeing the fastest bird in the world. What's great about the shot is I'm shooting down on him. I find that amazing. Often you're going to be looking up these birds speeding across the sky or diving on other birds because they eat other birds. And this is me crawling out on a cliff and photographing straight down on them. Considered taboo now these days. When I was shooting years ago, I was on my own and I could get away with it. But now crowds are out there and it's just not right. First of all, it's not right for the animals. This is their domain. You can see he's kind of looking up at me like, what are you? And it's just their area. Why are we out on the cliffs? It's what they're using to perch and to eat. So I've realized that over the years myself that you might be crossing the line by doing this. But I still love the image, and it's great when you shoot. When I used to shoot this in the fall, you get those fall colors on the trees at the bottom. This is a snail kite with its favorite food, apple snail. These snail kites are in Florida only. You can find them down there. And what's great about this is they're part of the ecosystem down there. When the water isn't good, the snails die off and the birds disappear. And so that's a perfect sign that something's wrong with the water supply. Interestingly enough, that's how we tell that something's wrong with the water. The snails are first. They're very sensitive. And so the Everglades system is actually a perfect system like that. And the state keeps it in pristine shape for that reason. And I applaud them on it. So that's what you're looking at here. Another animal eating. This is a spirit bear. We talked about a spirit bear. This is actually a black bear with white fur. And you can see these up in the Great Bear Rainforest of British Columbia, up by one of our hosts where she's living. It's a spectacular trip. You have to take a sailboat deep into the waters of British Columbia Inlet and find the right island to have them on. You need permission by the people that live there, the Inuits, to go, and it's an incredible experience. Just recommend it to anybody who wants to travel. An Arctic fox jumping from iceberg to iceberg. This one got caught out at sea on an iceberg while it was eating and then realized it needed to find a way back to land, and it was jumping from iceberg to iceberg, and I just captured it in the air. So we're talking about animal behavior here, finishing up our shot list, and I wanted to share some of their antics, and so that's what we're talking about, just to stay on focus. And so yes, capturing them in midair. You need super fast shutter speeds for this. When I'm shooting, I'm always at 800 ISO and up to be able to have this kind of shutter speed when I shoot, and that's fairly standard for me, 800 ISO and up. I can get great quality out of 800 ISO. I'm sure this is shot at 800 ISO, and you don't see really any grain in this at all. Okay, so action. I love action. Splashing water, anything like that I can get to make the picture better is what I'm going to get. And I think everybody can agree that this is the kind of image you want over something standing around still looking around. So yeah, the action and the water itself is just this awesome action shot of this spillage and splashes of the water. So I love the way this comes out with the bear, the black fur off it's stark off that white water. Same thing here up in the Arctic. I noticed the waves coming into land, and I knew I had to set up a camera on this polar bear to get them splashing when they hit shore. And so there's cognitive thought there. Absolutely. There's not one other person who thought this, set up their camera and took the shot. And so I'm on this tour with all these other big-time photographers, and they're walking along, and they didn't even think of it. And I love the light coming through the water wave. You can see some of the wave on the right of the bear. It's actually glowing from the sunlight. So a lot of fun when you think of this stuff and you're really, really concentrating on the backdrops, your foregrounds come alive, if you know what I mean now. And I hope everybody understands that. So I'm shooting water now at a long exposure. And of course, the bear has to be as still as possible to get him sharp. And I'll take 100 shots of this and get one good one. But the one good one is a spectacular image 90% of the time. And so I urge people to try these things as much as they can when they see a moving background and a still foreground. And even though the water is all around this, it makes sense, okay? I just want the rushing water to look like it's rushing. Same thing here. It's a different location, but the same concept, a long exposure, and I have to take so many shots in hopes to get that bear sharp, because the bear is fishing for salmon that are swimming up that waterfall. And so he's moving around, and I got to wait to these moments where it's super still, and I'm taking a half-second exposure here for the water, about a half a second. So that's an eternity for a bear to stay still. And here's another motion shot. So purposely putting motion shots to try to create a motion. All right, this is a reunion between a cub and a mother, and between the noise the cub was making and the mother, that we thought it was a big reunion, that they hadn't seen each other in a while. So I was trying to get blurry shots that made sense. And there was a while ago I said, if the eyes aren't sharp, the picture is probably no good. And I think this image crosses the boundary where the body language allows it to be acceptable. But it's questionable, and art is subjective to everybody. But this is me trying to touch the heart note on a reunion. Okay, now we're at my eye contact, because I love finishing my seminars with the eye contact. To me, I find them to be very profound. And I love staring into the animal's eyes. I mean, literally staring at them. I can do this for hours. And when you're out there live, this is exciting. Okay, even if the leopard isn't walking towards you and it's lazing around, when it notices you and you have this stare down, there's something about it. This is the most coveted animal in Africa to photograph. Everybody wants to see this. And when you see it, you know why. It's special. The spots, the way it walks, the elegance, the majesty of it. She is special. Every one of them is special. All right, and you need to know that. So eye contact. Short-eared owls is something I photograph a lot of owls, and getting this one coming right at me was something nothing short of spectacular, because I'm looking through a 600 or 840 millimeter lens, so I'm multiplying this guy quite a bit. He's far off, and even though he's coming right at me, he may not be looking right at me, although I think I got his attention. And the idea here is when you get these sharp eyes, it just takes your breath away. And it does for me still. And so I'm looking through the lens, and it's multiplied 800 times when I'm looking at it. So it's super special to experience that through the lens. And it's the same thing here. I'm photographing the bear with the waterfall, and it's hunting salmon. It's really not looking at me, but this is the moment it picked up its head. And so, like I said before, I'm taking a multiple frame because I know I want this awesome shot of this bear with the waterfall in the background charging. And so, of course, I picked the one where the eyes come up and look at the camera. It's only one shot out of 30. And so it's special. It's special because it's one shot out of 30, and it's special because there's eye contact here. in this spectacular moment. This is a big bear. Some of the biggest bears in the world are fishing in this spot. Yeah, very special to get eye contact to me. This wolf, I'm shooting a 1200 millimeter lens. It's far off, but it's walking right at me. And there's just no doubt that it is fixated on me. And I love moments like this. And so the idea is to try to capture it in a way that you feel the way I feel, which is difficult. You're looking at a picture, you're a two-dimensional surface. But what did I do to try to help it? The dog is in motion and it's kicking up that snow in the foreground. It's not static. And I think that helps it a lot because everything else is super sharp as if it was static. And so there's some ambiguity there. All right, same thing here. I'm looking at this animal. I'm in a safari vehicle, and I swear this animal is coming for me. So much so that I have to take my eyes off the camera and check how close is this animal? How close is this lion? Is it going to jump in the car? It has X-ray vision because it's looking through me at the animal on the other side of the car, and it's got senses that I know nothing about. But it pierced my body with its eye vision, like Superman does with his laser eyes. I mean, I feel him looking through me, and it makes your heart pump, boy. And I'm looking at this guy, and I got to look out of the camera to make sure he's not jumping in this car with me. It's a fantastic moment. You have to know it. And so I urge everybody in their lives to somehow get on a safari and try this out. It's incredible. Okay? Same thing here. I got permission from an Inuit who was watching over us while we're photographing spirit bears, as they always do. I got permission to stand in the river. And it's unusual because the river's filled with salmon. And what are the salmon doing? They're spawning. They're laying their eggs. He doesn't want me standing on the eggs or causing any kind of damage. And so he puts me on these rocks, and I sit on these rocks, and a bear walks up and catches this fish right in front of my face. I mean, there is nothing more exciting to me than capturing a moment like this with an animal like this. An animal, this thing is huge. And the ease at which it catches a fish. I mean, I'm human. I can't catch a fish without a net, without a fishing hook. And this animal's doing it right there in front of me with its bare paws. You know, fantastic moment and a lot of fun to see. This is something I think I'll probably finish on this, but I love talking about it. And this bear was just rolling over on the ice, changing its position. But its position is very human. Okay, so there's a great few things going on in this. The landscape shows he's on the ice, the water in the background, so that's a lot of fun to see just by itself. But yeah, his relaxation pose is so cute. So can you hear me now on the cell phone? I mean, there's so much going for an image like this. And so it's wonderful to look at and fun and funny and joyful. And that's the experience I'm hoping that somebody or everybody took from this seminar, that you can enjoy this wildlife and you don't need a big lens to do it. You can do it with smaller photography. You just need to think of backgrounds, foregrounds, environment, and the animals and how they act, and you can capture it all. This was so much fun to do for you. So I get to post my book. I do have a book on photographing birds of prey, and it has a lot of technical information on how to photograph wildlife. So even though it's based on birds of prey, you can apply it to any kind of wildlife and succeed well. If anybody is interested in something like this, you can certainly contact your hosts or me privately, and we'll get you one. I'll sign it over to you, whatever you need. I still have a bunch left before I start writing my new one. So that's all you're going to hear about that, because I don't want to get into it too far. But please be my guest. Call me up, and I'll set you up with one. My pleasure. It's a great, great piece of reading, and a great small, and you can carry it with you. So if you're going out, you can always have the book with you because it doesn't take up a lot of space. You can contact me and see me through these ways. There's my websites on top, and then some email. That's how you'll get the book. You can contact me with that email. And then, of course, you can follow on Instagram what I'm doing at The Element of Nature. I post at least once a day, and I try to keep it fresh all the time. And I would love the following. It always helps. And then that way you can always contact me through there, because there's a direct message on Instagram. And I would love to hear from every single one of you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me today. I will take any questions, and I will not go anywhere until everybody is satisfied, okay? So please, don't be shy to ask anything. There are no stupid questions, and I love talking about it. So please, shoot away.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Wow, that was a mouthful, huh?
Amazing pictures. Amazing pictures.
Thank you. I had fun taking them and sharing them with you. I love it. I love it.
That was amazing. And the good part is, you know, you were answering for most of the questions as and when it was popping up.
Yeah. In
Right,
between,
which is
we got, yeah, which is great. And yeah, we have some questions, generic questions that I left. What are some of your truly memorable moments in the field?
oh my goodness. There have been many. Okay. And, you know, the line walking at me, while I tried to describe what I was feeling because that was true. And certainly many years ago, when the first time I went to Africa and I was shooting film, slide film, and the first elephant that walked up to the car and like peeked in with its eyeball. I mean, Jurassic Park, man. And nobody make a sound. And all I want to do is click a picture, but it's incredible. But recently, I think this might take the cake. There's a couple of things, man. It goes on and on. I mean, there was a whale, and I have a GoPro of just his eye underwater. He's scratching his back on our boat. But the one that's sticking out the most right now, this last October, during the pandemic, I snuck out and went to Yellowstone. And I went to look for great gray owls. And there's a population in Yellowstone, and it was a perfect time to see them. And sure enough, the story is that there were some youngsters coming out, and they didn't see the owls, and it's exactly where I thought they were. And I didn't listen to them. I just went in and I said, let me go see for myself. And sure enough, I think in 90 seconds, I had my first owl. And so I looked and I saw them, and they were so far away, but I whistled. I made a big whistle for them. I don't think the owl appreciated it, but they heard me, and I just stuck up a thumb. And normally, I would sit on this for 4 hours and photograph it exclusively for myself. I would, because that is the greatest thing that can happen to a photographer, a one-on-one with a wild animal. But I photographed a lot of owls, and when they came out and explained to me that they didn't see anything and it was hours, I felt bad. I kind of felt bad, and I was like, let me get these guys back here and share this with them because they're right there. And sure enough, they came over and they couldn't stop thanking me, and I'm like, just take pictures. You don't know how long it's going to last. And all of a sudden, the bird flew onto my head, and I'm talking to an owl that's over 1.5 feet tall. It's a big bird, not very heavy, and I'm blown away. This has never happened to me. I photograph owls, and I'm blown away. There's chills up and down my spine, and I'm sitting there like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Holy smokes. And then I think I'm a little flustered, and the owl leaps off and sits on my camera lens.
Oh,
and
my God.
this camera lens, and like I'm a ventriloquist now. I say, take the picture to the 3 kids that I brought back. And I remember them very well. Brooke, Bew, and Bew took my picture with the owl on the lens, and it became viral right away. It's huge, and I share it all the time because it's incredible. It's incredible, and it was one of the greatest things. And we all wonder how that happened. And it also flew on one of the other girls' heads that was there. It was such a great experience for the 4 of us. We became great friends. We are friends to this day, and they're wonderful people. Arthur is the other guy. I'm so sorry, Arthur. You're the man, and I love you all. What a great day together. They were such great kids. I call them kids. They're adults. But for me, 44, I feel like the adult of them. It was a great experience. I was wearing a camouflage hat. I had my white beard and a gray shirt, and I'm telling you, it looked just like the owl's camouflage. It was a youngster, so it had some brown in it, all gray, and it had a white bow tie. It looked just like me. I'm telling you, it might have mistaken me for a large owl. I'm not sure, because it was unusual, extraordinary experience. So that went viral, and my Instagram went up finally, and it was a special thing. And my Instagram, because that's where I have a lot of concentration of my following and my work. So it's always important to get traffic. Sorry to be so acute, but yeah, it was exciting, and I'll never forget it. And it was just one of those things that rarely happens in the wild. There are always things that take your breath away, always. But to have an owl land on your head and then sit with you on your lens and get a picture of it, all wild. It was just an incredible experience. So I think that's the one that takes the cake, and it was the most recent of all of those. And I'm sure I could come up with more, but that one stands out. It's just always on my mind.
Yeah, and do you have any locations or destinations that draw you back for more photography?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, the animals usually stay in the same locations often. So Yellowstone is my place in America to go to. I go often, 3 times a year if I can, every winter, and I do a snowmobile tour every winter now. That's been successful, and it's small, but we can bring up to 9 people, and it's great. There's always something to photograph in the winter there. So I always go back there in winter. I went to Kenya the first time in 1997, and I remember specifically saying out loud on that trip, I will be back to this place. And now I've been 3 times. And so I know Misha knows it, and there's something spiritually special about Kenya and most of Africa, for that matter. The animals, the place is untouched by human hands, and they work hard to keep it that way. And I applaud them on how good they are at doing it. The Kenyan people are special people. They're kind-hearted, and they care. And so that place is very special. The polar bear spot, very special. The Alaska is very special. Anywhere you go. These are locations that constantly will pay off no matter what. Costa Rica, another place. I even have a small timeshare in Costa Rica that I go every year, once a week a year, just to get the birds out there, the black sand beaches. There's things about the birds, the hummingbirds, and very special. The Paws, just a different palette of wildlife. So that's a place I frequent. Locally, all the time, there's local spots that pay off, like that Palisades. I talked about the Palisades a few times here in New York, New Jersey. Birds Central, eagles, hawks, and falcons. The beach has falcons and owls. So I constantly go to these places because I don't want to say I'm guaranteed, but you commonly will get a shot of something. And now there's a huge population of bald eagles on Long Island, New York, and we're getting a lot more of that. There's Conowingo Dam in Washington, D.C. area. That's an eagle haven. If you want to get a portfolio of eagles in one day, go to that spot, and you're going to get them flying, fighting, fishing, perched. So there are special locations that pay off no matter what. Photographers frequent for great portfolio work. And I applaud them because that's what it takes. It takes the travel. I have a program on adventure travel where I talk about all the locations and why they're special. And people do appreciate it because I don't like giving out locations when I post. Like I said, if you post in real time, you can hurt the animals. Okay, you don't need 100 people surrounding a nesting situation. You have to keep your head on your shoulders. This stuff is exciting. It will excite the first person, first time, and the 100th when you do it. So you have to remember, we are here sharing this with the animals. We have to take them into consideration. They come first, and if you act like that and you follow that etiquette, you will be fine. Everybody will appreciate you, and it will be harmonious with the animals and you. And believe me, the animals remember. They are smart. They know by experience, and if you treat them well, they will give you good stuff in return. They know. They do know.
Yeah.
Take that.
Is there any species that you are yet to photograph and you would like to photograph?
Well, I definitely. It's a nonstop search for sure, but I'm going to
some dream species.
Jaguars of the Pantanal are big for me. Tigers in India is a very hard trip. I don't want to say it's unattainable, but it's slightly out of reach in New York. It's tough flight, tough get. You need the right guides. You need the right locations. Everything matters when you're spending that kind of money. So you got to take it all into consideration. So that's definitely something on my plate for the future. I lost the Patagonia trip with the wild mountain lions out there. That was a huge deal. Big cats are a big part of what I do. I do a lot of bear trips. but that's all available in North America, so that's not a problem. So yeah, the Jaguars, I hope to be able to see. I hope to be able to get out on that mountain lion trip in the future. And anything else? Stellar's Eagles out in Japan. I'd like to do something with that because I'm always into the birds of prey. I can go on.
Yeah, it's a never-ending thing for any photographer.
I think
One
so.
last question.
Please.
One last question we have. Any tips or suggestion to budding wildlife photographers?
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. Well, stay consistent. These days, I've been through a life of change with photography. I started in film, and then it changed drastically to digital when I was in college. And I got to be honest, even then, I didn't quite see the value of the change. But you need to grasp that by the horns and use it as a tool. So you have an opportunity here to post on social media in multiple locations all day long. And although it takes up a lot of your time and a lot of effort, those channels are going to get you seen and you're going to make friends. And some of the newest people I've seen, they impress me because here I am, one of the older Instagram users, posting once, twice a day, if whatever, but they're not just doing that. They'll post my images and say, check out this great photographer. He's awesome. You should follow his page. And then you end up seeing his work and my work, and it's brilliant because they're tying it all together. So there's definitely ways to be clever on this new platform. And I urge these new photographers to use it to their advantage. Think outside the box. When I was younger, I used to frequent places all the time. Now I don't do that as much anymore because I feel if you nailed the shot and you don't think you can get much better, find something else and go back to that later. Okay. Let's complete your portfolio and don't dwell on the same things every week. If you got an awesome falcon shot, let's go to eagles. Let's not do falcons every day for 4 weeks. Try to expand your horizons a little bit. That will help. And again, being consistent, I would say, talking to your audience and putting your images out there as much as possible. Taking the critique is important too, and using it to your advantage. When people talk about your images, listen carefully because those are the people that are looking at your images and judging you. All right. And so when you hear a negative, it's a positive. Because you can go back and I'm going to reshoot that and I'm going to continue to put those little things that guy said because I think they're important. Because if they're important to one person, they're probably important to other people. All right. So pay attention to the people, your peers and your judges. Listen to that because that's information on how to make your images even better. And that's something a lot of people overlook. They get upset and it's the wrong state of mind. We all love our own work. I mean, everything I put out is gold, but ultimately I have to relook at it and say, no, this doesn't fall under the shot list or this doesn't reach my criteria of awesome. Okay. That's what I want from you guys. I want you to stick with awesome. Don't give me the 7, give me the 1. Give me the 1 and then move on and give me another 1 and then move on and give me another 1. That's a strong portfolio.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think we have covered almost all the questions now.
I'm glad, because it's important that everybody gets a little say and knowledge out of this. The whole thing was knowledge. I hope I gave you all a lot. This is applied to everything. So don't just leave it for your wildlife, but it helps in wildlife a lot because the images start to sing their own praises without you, and that's what you want.
True.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. It was a wonderful session.
It was wonderful. I love doing this, and I really appreciate both of you for bringing me out, finding me, and making this happen together. I know there's a lot of work in it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And have a great evening, and call me anytime.
Yeah. We will.
Right. We'll
discuss. We'll be in touch, and
Great. Thank you for everybody who stayed and listened and took their day off to listen to me. Thank you all. I don't take it for granted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that was a spectacular session and it was so wonderful. Every story was so catching and with every bit of the details, technically as well as a visual treat. So that was amazing. And
so
what's next, Hermie?
next is on drone photography.
That's great.
Yeah, we have something on 29th. I'll be posting it tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
next Saturday we have this session on drone
All right.
photography. Yeah.
Okay then.
Again.
Yeah. Just, thank you for being. And I hope you all enjoyed it. It was definitely an eye opener for us. So spectacular. Once again, thanks to Scott. And don't forget, it is COVID time. So please stay safe.
On that note, bye for now.